Stormwind is rubble. Every survivor who could make it onto a boat is sailing north with Anduin Lothar. The Horde controls an entire kingdom, and Aegwyn Doomhammer is already planning what comes next. If you haven't seen my last video, The Fall of Stormwind, The Death of King Lane, The Rise of Doomhammer, go watch that first, because today we're picking up exactly where it left off. Warcraft II Tides of Darkness, bigger than its predecessor in every way. 2 12-mission campaigns, naval combat, siege weapons, air units, a map editor, but also one of the most lore-dense manuals Blizzard has ever created. 3 in-universe documents this time. Aegwyn herself narrates the human history, Gul'dan tells us the orc side from inside of his own head, and a third section sets up the expansion we're also covering today, Beyond the Dark Portal. Like with orcs and humans, we're covering both campaigns, both endings, and we'll be clear about which is canonical and where later games change things. Before we get into it though, I want to give a quick shout out to my channel members for supporting the channel. There'll be more info on how to become a member at the end of the video, but for now, let's get into the lore. Before Warcraft II begins, the manual needs to explain how we got from Stormwind is burning to a continent-wide war with a navy. The title page of the lore section is worth noting before we even get into the first word. It doesn't say written by Aegwyn or Aegwyn's account, it says a brief history of the fall of Azeroth, as told by the matriarch of Tirisfal. That's her title and not her name. She introduces herself on the first page, but the manual frames her by her office first, and that I think is deliberate. And then she opens like this: "My name is Aegwyn, and for over 1000 years I have wandered the realms of this world and endeavoured to safeguard the peoples of its lands against the ethereal powers of the great dark beyond. I have seen mighty kingdoms rise and fall. I have witnessed the deeds of high nobility and the lowest of rabble both conspire to define the destiny of mankind." And that's just the first paragraph. 1000 years of history compressed into 3 sentences. She's not building to anything here, she's establishing her credentials before she tells you how she failed. She explains her order's mandate carefully. The Guardians of Tirisfal will give him the power and longevity to battle the forces of the Twisting Nether, but with one absolute constraint. The Guardian must not interfere with the affairs of men until the time comes when a successor must be chosen and the mantle of guardianship is passed to another. That is the cage she's been living in, and it's the rule that makes everything that follows her fault in a way she can never truly begin to say directly. When she decides her time has come, she travels to Azeroth to find the father for her heir. She chooses Nihilus Aran, the court conjurer, specifically because of his talent with magic. Nihilus was exceptionally talented in the simple, conjurative magics of men, she writes, and I believe that he would be the perfect mortal father for my child, and so he was. There's no warmth in that last clause. It reads like a transaction she's justifying to herself after the fact. She gave birth in 559, names the child Medivh, which she tells us means keeper of secrets in the ancient tongue of the elves, and transfers everything into him. I transferred all of my knowledge and power into the infant, locking it deeply within him to manifest itself only when he reached physical maturity. Then she leaves. Believing that my work on this world was done, and seeing that my son would be cared for by Nihilus's people, I wandered across the fields of time, preparing myself for the passing. She did watch him from a distance though. She tells us that she was assured that the deep-seated altruism of Tirisfal would guide him in his trials and temper his heart and mind as to make him worthy of the guardianship that was, I believed, his destiny. On the eve of his 13th birthday, the power erupted. Unable to deal with the raw cosmic energies surging inside him, Medivh suffered a massive psychic trauma. The clerics of Northshire took him in, 6 years in their care, all but comatose. When he woke, he seemed fine and in control. And Aegwyn writes something here that is almost unbearable to read, knowing what it leads to. Yet, underneath the confident and almost arrogant facade, I somehow knew that my son had become malevolent and corrupt. The wisdom and power that was his birthright had been prevented by distant forces within the Twisting Nether, altering the human part of his soul and marking him with its evil touch forever. So that means that she knew, and she could also sense it, but the rules stated that she could never interfere. Then, the Orcs came through, and her sentence for this moment is the most stripped down in the entire document. It was not until the first wave of those wretched creatures known as the Orcs thundered through the Dark Rift that I realised how incredibly dangerous my son had become. Here is where Warcraft II's manual gives us the first full account of what Warcraft I only hinted at. After waking from his coma, Medivh spent years descending. The manual lists it methodically. Delving into the forbidden arts of necromancy, Medivh began to unravel the mysteries of life and death. He took to consorting with demons from the lower planes, using their powers to augment his own. His hunger for power became stronger, and with every minor success, Medivh fell ever deeper into the dark abyss of madness. He travelled far throughout the astral plane, exploring the infinite secrets of the great dark beyond. And then, it was then, in the midst of swirling chaotic hallucinations, that Medivh first encountered a world beyond his own and captured a glimpse of the abhorrent, murderous denizens of that place. Here at last was the tool that Medivh had been searching for. What followed was a deliberate negotiation. Desirous of complete domain over Azeroth, Medivh used the insights gained from the knowledge of Tirisfal to strike a bargain with Gul'dan the Warlock, the mightiest of the rulers on the dark, red world that haunted Medivh's visions. He communicated through deep trances and astral projection. He told Gul'dan about the tomb beneath the Northern Sea, the same tomb where Aegwyn herself had imprisoned Sargeras 800 years before. She adds a detail here that lands heavily. Even I cannot say whether or not of the power of Sargeras remains entombed there. She doesn't know what she unleashed. She defeated Sargeras, sealed him away, and genuinely doesn't know if that seal held. The terms of the deal are stated plainly. Medivh agreed to furnish the location of the tomb of Sargeras to Gul'dan, as well as the entire world to conquer. In exchange for this gift, Medivh required the total destruction of the only force he believed capable of contending his ascendancy to power, the great kingdom of Azeroth. The portal opened in the year 583. Aegwyn went to his tower to try and stop him. She describes the attempt without self-pity. The power that was once of Tirisfal had become so twisted inside him that my pleas seemed as nothing. I fought with what energy remained in my weakened body, but having given all my powers to him so long ago, I was easily defeated and banished from his sight. She gave him everything at birth, and she had nothing left. And that, the choice she made in 559 that she believed was righteous, is what she had been carrying ever since. The section ends with a brief account of the First War's aftermath and the description of the political situation as Warcraft II begins. Doomhammer has taken control. Gul'dan is assembling ships. Rend and Maim, the Sons of Blackhand, are consolidating their own faction. And the last line of her account is this: although other factions grow stronger within the chaotic horde, it seems certain that all of the clans will follow Doomhammer's plans to hunt down and destroy the renegade humans of Azeroth wherever they choose to run. The Orc lore section has a title page too, and like Aegwyn's, it tells you something before the first word. It doesn't just say Gul'dan's history, it actually says the history of Orcish ascension, as told by Gul'dan, chieftain of the Stormreaver clan. In the first game, Garona described Gul'dan as a warlock who operated in shadows, who had no clan, who pulled strings invisibly. By the time he's writing this, he has a clan named after him. The Shadow Councillor has a throne now, or he thinks he does. The section is titled The Rise of the Shadow Council, and it opens like this: like an elemental force of havoc and destruction, we thundered through the lands of the Draenor, devastating all that we beheld. Not one life was spared. No building was left standing. The only traces of their existence were the blood-soaked fields they had worked for nearly 5,000 years and the rank, acrid smell of the huge victory fires that consumed the bodies of their young. The Draenor were a weak people, hardly worth the effort of our raiding sweep. In the end, however, even these simple victories served to keep the inferior in their place. That is certainly an opening paragraph. A 5,000 year civilization annihilated, dismissed in 2 sentences, and the ellipsis at the end isn't hesitation, it's satisfaction. Then he introduces himself. I am Gul'dan, the greatest of all warlocks and initiate of the 7th circle of the Shadow Council. No one knows the dark, burning allure of the ultimate power better than I. He describes his youth studying under the tribal shamans, outgrowing them, watching his greatest teacher, Ner'zhul, grow jealous as his abilities surpassed everything they could offer, and then the encounter that changes everything. He tells us that he had already begun secret explorations of energies far beyond the scope of anything that my so-called tutors could possibly comprehend when he discovered kil'jaeden. He doesn't describe this as a meeting, he describes it as being unmade. I was in awe of his heartless fury. To witness his awesome power was to be all but consumed. In the fleeting, feathered nightmares he brought me, I touched the essence of that which lies beyond. Within me, an unfathomable lust was sown, a desire to wield the fury of ethereal storms and to stand unscathed within the dying hearts of burning suns. Under kil'jaeden's instruction, Gul'dan's understanding of the cosmos expanded completely. He learned that there are worlds without number scattered through the darkness beyond the sky. He learns to project himself into the twisting nether, driven nearly mad by the whispering chaos contained therein, and eventually unbound from his body in those depths, he first speaks to the dead. This moment matters to him not spiritually, but practically. Orcish religion held that dead ancestors watched over the clans from some lost realm of chaos. Gul'dan dismisses this. I believe this notion to be a product of ritual and not reality. What he discovers in the twisting nether is that the spirits of the dead do linger, floating on the astral winds between the worlds, keeping their endless silent vigil over the clans in hope of finding some means of escape from their lifeless torment. He doesn't find this moving though, he finds it useful. I knew then that these spirits of the dead would be a useful tool for anyone who could bind them to his will. Meanwhile, the horde on Draenor is collapsing. The Draenei are gone. With nothing left to conquer, the clans have turned on each other. Minor disputes between clans led to open battle and massive bloodshed. Those chieftains who attempted to assume the position of overlord soon found themselves slaughtered by the ravenous legions of the disheartened horde. Gul'dan decides the time has come to act. He gathers a small circle of warlocks, put them through secret rituals, and destroys any who can't channel the required power. Then he binds the survivors to the dark spirits of the Nether, and the Shadow Council is born. The result? Within a few short months, the Shadow Council had its hand in all of the important political matters within the Horde. Nothing occurred within the Horde that we did not know about, and many events took place by our design, so cleverly implemented that even the clan chieftains were oblivious to our manipulations. Before half a year had passed, we had assumed near total control of the inner workings of the Horde, and then something happens that Gul'dan doesn't engineer and cannot explain. His apprentice warlock starts screaming in the night. He arrives at the tower to find them locked in deep trances, their faces twisted into masks of pain. Something has contacted them in their dreams, and, crucially, whatever it was that had contacted the warlocks had made no attempt to reach me. That detail irritates him visibly. Whatever this presence is, it reached out to his apprentices first and ignored him entirely. He consults with kil'jaeden, and what he finds there stops him cold. Kil'jaeden, the demon who shattered Gul'dan's sense of his own power just by being witnessed, is afraid of his presence too. The manual puts it plainly. The power was beyond any he had ever experienced before. Gul'dan writes, whether it was the image of a force so awesome that it could cause the baneful demon to actually feel fear, or my own trepidation, I fled, moving aimlessly through the twisting nether for what seemed like an eternity. And then the presence catches up with him. It speaks. You fear me, for you do not understand me. See my world and understand your fear. Then fear is no more. What follows is one of the most unusual passages in the entire manual. Gul'dan receives a vision, and the manual renders it as a fragmented imagery, staggered on the page, spaced apart, each line its own line. Barren wastes, dark swamps, teeming with life, endless fields of emerald grasses, forests of magnificent trees, farmlands filled with rich harvests, villages of proud, strong people. Then images came, flashing much too quick to comprehend, and then something, a fleeting picture that left a longing stirring inside of my soul. Buried deep beneath the ocean, dark and ruined, but still breathing, still pulsing with the lifeblood of the earth itself. An ancient power, ancient and terrible. Gul'dan wakes knowing the dream was real. He meets with the Shadow Council. They agree to keep the vision secret. Any warlocks outside the council who shared it are killed immediately, because if word spreads before preparations are made, the Horde would tear itself apart. Weeks pass with no further contact. Then the rift appeared. The first scouts through came back mad. It takes time to expand the rift enough to move orc-sized bodies through it. Eventually, they confirm that the world beyond matches the visions. The Shadow Council uses its combined power to enlarge the rift into a portal. Orc forces begin crossing into a land called Azeroth. The first assault on Stormwind is catastrophic. The Horde charges in expecting easy prey and gets repulsed. Badly. The humans unleashed warriors mounted upon beasts of muscle and sinew that devastated the orc forces, driving them back to the swamps around the portal. The defeat fractures the Horde. Cho'Gall and Kil'jaeden Deadeye blame each other. Factions form. Violence threatens to break everything apart before it has begun. Gul'dan's solution is Blackhand. He's blunt about exactly why he chose him. Blackhand, chieftain of the young Blackrock clan and a raider in the Scythegore arm, was well honoured by most orcs within the Horde. More importantly, he was extremely lustful, and this made him easily corruptible. With the Shadow Council's help, Gul'dan put Blackhand on the Warchief's throne through blackmail and bribery. While the Horde rallied under Blackhand and the other chieftains acquiesced control to him, it was I who dictated policy by blackmailing and bribing Blackhand. Then Medivh reappears. He arrives, more in control of his powers, but less in control of his mind. He offers treasures, baubles, promises. Gul'dan dismisses all of it, and then Medivh plays his real card. His face broke into a wicked sneer as he proceeded to show me the image of an ancient tomb upon which was etched the name of the demon lord Sargeras. The tomb of Sargeras. The demon lord, who had instructed my own tutor kil'jaeden, was entombed upon his pathetic little world. Destiny had chosen to lay the hand upon my shoulders alone, for kil'jaeden had told me that the lost tomb contained power absolute, enough to make any who would control it into a living god. One sentence follows. Thus, the Orcish hordes made war against the kingdom of Azeroth. That's the entire First War reduced to a transaction. The war goes well enough. Stormwind falls, King Lane is killed by my personal assassin Garona the Half-Orc, but Gul'dan's real plan hits a wall. A small band of humans storms Medivh's tower. As they kill him, Medivh began to transmit telepathic waves of trauma across the astral plane, which easily shattered even my formidable defences. Gul'dan tries to reach into the dying sorcerer's mind and steal the tomb's location directly. He fails. Before I could divest the location, Medivh was killed by the Azerothians. Having been inside his mind at the moment of his temporal death, I suffered a massive psychic backlash and fell into a catatonic state. He wakes weeks later. Blackhand is dead. Doomhammer has taken control, purged the Shadow Council's warlocks, and has Gul'dan brought before him in chains. What follows is one of the best scenes in any Warcraft manual. Gul'dan, stripped of his power base, facing execution, talks his way out with a single argument. I reminded him that with the death of the Warlocks, I was the last true sorcerer within the Horde. Doomhammer, the manual says, was made impudent by his victory, and agrees to let Gul'dan live by his good graces. Gul'dan's response to this mercy is recorded immediately. I silently vowed that he would one day take those words to his grave. He then manipulates Doomhammer further, convincing him falsely that the Raiders are planning a revolt with Rend and Maim, which gets the Wolf Riders disbanded and Gul'dan allowed to enter seclusion to create a new undead legion as a show of loyalty. In seclusion, his necrolytes fail him. The undead they produce are too weak. Gul'dan identifies the problem. Their spirits were willing, it was the flesh that was weak. His solution is to summon every last necrolyte to a great altar, constructed of ironwood and blackroot, where, at the height of a black incantation, I took the lives of every last one of them. He then acquires the long dead corpses of fallen knights of Azeroth, and into them instills the essences of the Greater Shadow Council members, his warlocks killed by Doomhammer given new bodies. I furnished each of the Dark Riders a jeweled truncheon through which they could better focus the unearthly powers they would brandish. Into these jewels were infused the raw necromantic magics of the freshly slain necrolytes. Thus were the Death Knights born. Loyal in appearance to Doomhammer, loyal in reality to Gul'dan. The section ends with his internal monologue, printed on the page with unusual spacing, each line given room to breathe, like a declaration. I will be patient and bide my time, pretending to be the faithful servant until the time comes to show this presumptuous, boisterous upstart who is greater between us. My designs to discover the tomb of Sargeras still remain. I have assembled the Stormreaver clan to be my support when the season finally comes to strike back at Aegwyn for his insolent crimes against me. That day draws near, and Doomhammer cannot know what terrors await him, for I am Gul'dan. I am darkness incarnate. I will not be denied. This section of the manual is actually split across two separate documents. The first is the continuation of Aegwyn's account, titled The Alliance of Lordaeron, which describes how the Alliance comes together. The second is the Nations of the Alliance section, which gives each member state its own entry with a leader, a colour and a background description. Together they paint a much richer picture than either does alone. Aegwyn's account picks up directly from Stormwind's Fall. With the arrival of the Azerothian refugees upon the shores of Lordaeron, King Terenas formed a council of delegates from each of the 7 kingdoms under his rule, recounting terrible tales of destruction and carnage wrought by the Orcish invaders in Azeroth. The steward, Lord Anduin Lothar, convinced the sovereign of Lordaeron to unite themselves against this great threat. Despite much quarrelling and debate, the lords acquiesced to Lothar and Terenas, and agreed to unite their armies under the general command of Lothar himself. That specific phrase, despite much quarrelling and debate, is doing a lot of work. This wasn't a clean or noble moment here. These were 7 sovereign rulers being asked to subordinate their armies to a man with no kingdom, no throne, and a catastrophic defeat to his name. The fact that they eventually said yes is the remarkable thing here. Lothar's first ally is his oldest friend. As the shores of Lordaeron had already been savaged by small bands of orc marauders, Lothar found a strong ally in his longtime friend Admiral Daelin Proudmoore of the seaside kingdom of Kultiras. The Nations section gives us more on Proudmoore and Kultiras. Before the First War, its far-ranging merchant ships made it the most prosperous nation in the known world. When the orcs began raiding coastal settlements, Proudmoore had already started building warships on his own initiative. When Lothar calls, he's ready. The manual describes him as a Lord Admiral, commanding a maritime merchant nation whose fleet becomes the backbone of the Alliance's naval power. His friendship with Lothar isn't incidental, it's the first domino that brings the others. The second to commit is Forrest Trollbane of Stormgate, Stormguard, described as quick to offer his support to this newly forged alliance, sensing that the time for glorious battle was at hand. The Nations section fills in why Stormguard is such a valuable addition. The Kingdom of Stormguard retains a strict martial philosophy which makes it a highly regarded addition to the alliance. Situated amongst the foothills of the Alterac Mountains, Stormguard serves as a sentinel against any invasion across the Orc-controlled borders of Khadgar. Possessing a long history of warfare against the Trolls, the warriors of Stormguard are well prepared to engage in open combat with all enemies of humanity. A kingdom that has spent generations fighting Trolls knows exactly what kind of war this is going to be. Then comes the religious dimension. Aegwyn writes, "As the Holy Writ commandeth that the whole armour of righteousness be worn in the war against evil, Alonza's Fowl, abbot of the now destroyed Northshire Abbey, convinced the ecclesiastic ministers of Lordaeron to gird their priests and followers alike with weapons of war." The manual's unit description for paladins expands this into one of the most compelling origin stories in the game. Paladins are a holy order of warriors whose purpose is to defend and shepherd the war-torn populace of Lordaeron. The Archbishop, Alonza's Fowl, perceived that the pious clerics of Northshire, who suffered such terrible attrition in the First War, were ill-suited for the dangers of combat. Along with many of the surviving clerics of Northshire, he sought those of only the greatest virtue among the knighthood of Lordaeron and tutored them in the ways of magic. Led by the crusading Uther Lightbringer, it now rests upon these paladins, christened the Knights of the Silver Hand, to heal the wounds sustained in combat and to restore faith in the promise of freedom from Orcish tyranny. And the Legends of the Land section gives us Uther himself. Uther Lightbringer learned firsthand that faith alone would not defeat the terrible horde. Many of the clerics were slain during the First War, and so the Archbishop devoted himself to rebuilding the order as to provide the citizens of Lordaeron with hope and faith. Knowing that this war with the unholy orcs could not end soon, Uther discerned that the Archbishop's new order must be able to defend the people as well as heal them. Thus, young Uther took up the sword and shield and issued the call to the most pious amongst the knights of Lordaeron. Many great knights heeded Uther's beckoning and joined the order which became known as the Knights of the Silver Hand. Warriors who can heal, healers who can fight. The Silver Hand is partially a military innovation and partly an act of spiritual recovery. The Church of Lordaeron rebuilding itself into something that can survive the next war. From Khadgar come the dwarves of Ironforge. Aegwyn's account is direct. They arrived reporting that the orcs had already begun to assault their mountain kingdom. They don't need convincing. The war has already come to them. The dwarves offered their support in arms and ingenious technologies to the Alliance, who in turn assured them that the orcs would be driven back at all costs. The elves are more complicated though. Aegwyn describes them as the reclusive elves of Silvermoon, who ventured forth from the shadowy forest of Quel'Thalas to offer their service to the Alliance. The unit description gives them their full name. The elven archers are descendants of the elder race of Lordaeron, unmatched with the bow, keen of eye and fleet of foot, and long embroiled in the bloody conflict with the hated trolls of Lordaeron. But their motivation for joining isn't just military solidarity. Aegwyn records something more troubling. Their magics, so closely tied to the forces of the earth, had shown evidence that the orcs had been defiling the very lands of Lordaeron as part of their sinister plans. They can feel what the horde is doing to the ground. Their connection to the earth is showing them the corruption spreading outward from the orc-held territory. They're not joining out of just principle, they're joining because they can already sense the damage. And with the dwarves come the gnomes. Aegwyn doesn't name them separately, but the unit descriptions are enthusiastic about them. The gnomish flying machine entry reads, "The gnomes of Khadgar have long offset their lack of physical strength with ingenuity and daring. Flying machines, submarines, the entire aerial and underwater reconnaissance capability of the Alliance fleet exists because of gnomish engineering." The gnomish inventor entry adds that they are responsible for perfecting the technique of extracting various chemical compounds out of oil to make gunpowder and explosives, and that while the gnomes are a bit odd and eccentric, none can deny their value to the Alliance. Now, for the nations who are notably absent or compromised. Gilneas. The nations section is pointed about this. Despite the impending Orcish invasion, Gilneas has remained separate from the Alliance of Lordaeron. As ruler of one of the strongest human nations, Gain Greymane is convinced that his own armies can deal with any threat, and has therefore remained unmoved by Lord Lothar's pleas for unity. The manual doesn't condemn Greymane, it just states the fact. He stays out, his nation is listed in the Nations of the Alliance section anyway, which is a quiet joke. Gilneas is technically a nation of Lordaeron, it just refuses to actually participate in the Alliance. Anyone who later played through WoW's Worgen starting zone will recognise the beginning of the isolationist philosophy that defines Gilneas' entire subsequent history right here in this entry. Alterac. The nations section is the most interesting on this one, because it's the only entry that plants the seeds of betrayal while presenting it as ambiguity. Alterac is the weakest of human nations and is only a minor contributor of troops and equipment to the Alliance. Although Lord Perinold praises Lothar and Terenas for their ongoing efforts, he is beset by the fear that when the Horde comes, the Alliance will fail, and only the surrender of his forces and his sovereignty will save the lives of his subjects. Perinold alone knows whether or not, when the final call to arms is sounded, Alterac will fight for its freedom alongside the other nations of the Alliance. That last sentence is doing everything here. The manual isn't telling you Perinold is a traitor, it's telling you that he might be, and leaving the question open for the campaign to answer. And then there is Lordaeron itself, whose entry in the nations section carries the weight of the whole enterprise. Ruled by the benevolent King Terenas, the nation of Lordaeron stands as the last bastion of hope for humanity. The armies of Lordaeron were the first to heed the call to arms issued by Sir Lothar and the people of Azeroth. As patron of the Alliance, King Terenas has assumed the heavy mantle of leadership to protect all who abide in his domain. The armies of Lordaeron are deeply religious and are driven by the belief that humanity must stand steadfast against the blasphemous onslaught of the Horde. Aegwyn closes her account of the Alliance's formation with a line that lands as both epic and ominous. Thus, united in arms against a common foe, the Alliance stands upon the shores of destiny and awaits the coming tides of darkness. The game opens with a cinematic that bridges directly from the manual's lore. The narrator sets out the scene in a handful of sentences.
The once mighty army of Azeroth lay among the blackened and charred remains of Stormwind Keep. Those that escaped fled across the Great Sea, bringing tales of the suffering they had faced at the hands of the Orcish hordes. Eager to engage in battle once again, the Orcs constructed ships of war to bear them across the Great Sea. The Orcish warriors yearned for the sounds of battle to fill the air, and looked to the far horizon for new blood to spill. Using the weapons forged by their new allies, the humans made haste to prepare for the onslaught. While dwarven cannon were being loaded, others armed themselves with elven steel and mail. Now, united in arms with new allies against a common foe, mankind stands at the shores of destiny and awaits the coming of the tides of darkness.
Stormwind is rubble, the survivors have fled across the Great Sea, and now the Horde has built ships to follow them. The structural difference from the first game is worth stating clearly before we get into individual missions. Warcraft I was set entirely within one kingdom. Warcraft II is a continental war. 4 acts across 4 separate regions: Lordaeron's southern shores, the dwarven lands of Khazmodan, the elven kingdom of Quel'Thalas in the far north, and the return to the south to Azeroth for the final battle. The naval dimension is entirely new. The Horde needs ships to cross the Great Sea and push north. The Alliance needs ships to stop them. Both sides are building fleets at the same time. Both campaigns open with the same location from opposite perspectives, the southern shores of Lordaeron, specifically the Hillsbrad region, and that's where we start. Act 1, Seas of Blood. Human Mission 1, Hillsbrad.
Due to your position as regional commander of the Southern Defense Forces, Lord Terenas commands that you raise an outpost in the Hillsbrad foothills. It is rumored that Orcish marauders have been raiding coastal towns in the area, but whether these attacks are part of a greater Horde offensive is as yet unknown. Your outpost is to provide food and information for Alliance troops, and as such, should be a community consisting of at least 4 farms. You must also construct a barracks in order to safeguard the Hillsbrad operation.
The first human mission establishes something important about the Alliance's position at the start of the war. They don't fully know what they're facing yet. Terranus is asking for an outpost to gather food and information. The briefing notes that Orcish marauders have been raiding coastal towns, but adds, whether these attacks are part of a greater horde offensive is, as yet, unknown. The Alliance is playing catch up. They've rebuilt enough to defend, but not enough to understand the full scale of what's coming. Orc Mission 1, Zuldar.
The Horde is preparing to launch an assault against the mainland of Lordaeron. Orgrim Doomhammer, war chief of the Orcish hordes and ruler of the Blackrock clan, has ordered you to establish a small outpost on Lordaeron's southern shores. To secure the Zuldar region as Doomhammer demands, you will need to construct a barracks and several farms to feed your troops. Your success may help us determine the extent of the pathetic human defenses and what resistance they can offer against our forces.
The Horde has no such uncertainty. Doomhammer knows exactly what he's doing, establishing a forward operating base on Lordaeron's southern shore to probe human defences before the main assault. The contrast between the two briefings tells you everything about the strategic situation. One side is scrambling to understand the threat, the other is already executing a plan. Orc Mission 2 and Human Mission 2, raid at Hillsbrad and ambush at Taran Mill.
Our spies report that a band of human soldiers have captured a war party led by Troll Commander Zul'jin and have taken them to a secret prison near the township of Hillsbrad. Seeing an opportunity to place these captives in debt to the Horde, Doomhammer sends you to ransom Zul'jin and his trolls and return them to their own encampment nearby. The war chief believes that this raid upon the unsuspecting prison will strike terror into the hearts of those who would dare resist the Horde.
A great host of orcs have reconstructed the Dark Portal and now lay siege to the citadel of Nethergard. The Horde still maintain their hold over the great winged dragons of Azeroth. A faction of these creatures, seeming to have grown to crave the taste of battle, have become willing allies with the orcs under the leadership of a great black dragon known only as Deathwing. Danap has been asked to raise an army from New Stormwind to relieve the beleaguered forces at Nethergard and drive the Horde back towards the portal. You must lead the forces of Azeroth in an attempt to break the vanguard of the invading Horde, for unless their assault is stopped, they will gain dominion over the Black Morass.
These two missions cover the same event from opposite sides, the capture and rescue of the troll commander Zul'jin. The Horde briefing frames it as an opportunity. Free Zul'jin, put the trolls in debt to Doomhammer, gain troll axe throwers and destroyers as allies. The human briefing frames it as a diplomatic mission. Terranus wants the Elves of Silvermoon in the Alliance, and rescuing their captured scouts is the first step towards that. The Troll Alliance is worth flagging from the manual. The Legends section describes Zul'jin as someone who initially refused Doomhammer's overtures, but the growing tension between the trolls and elves over the coming war meant that only an alliance with the orcs will save his people. He's not joining here out of loyalty, he's joining out of calculation. That matters when we get to what happens to the elves of Quel'Thalas later. Human and Orc Mission 3, South Shore.
With the safe return of the elves from the loathsome clutches of the orcs, the Council of Silvermoon has resolved to combine the armies of Quel'Thalas with those of the Alliance of Lordaeron. As a show of their support, a mighty fleet of elven destroyers have been sent to help safeguard the Lordaeron mainland. In preparation for the arrival of these ships, Dalen Proudmoore, Lord of Kul'Tiras and Grand Admiral of the Lordaeron Fleet, has ordered that you begin the construction of naval facilities near the township of South Shore. There is some suspicion that the Horde has constructed a secret base near the mainland, so it is imperative that you begin building your defense with haste.
In preparation for a final strike on Hillsbrad, the War Chief directs you to begin construction of facilities for the Orcish Armada near the South Shore region. Zul'jin and his trolls, eager to take revenge upon the humans who imprisoned them, have agreed to aid the Horde by supplying axe throwers and destroyers to assist in defending your South Shore operation. A shipyard must be constructed in order to build our wave riders, and you will need much of the black liquid known as oil to build your fleet. Our assault on Hillsbrad cannot begin until your task is completed.
Again, the same location from both sides. The Alliance is building naval infrastructure. The Horde is doing the same. Both sides understand that whatever controls the water controls the war. The human briefing introduces Admiral Daelin Proudmoore by name and title for the first time in the campaign, described here as Grand Admiral of the Lordaeron fleet, which connects directly to the manual's description of him as Lothar's longtime friend and the man who committed Kul Tiras's entire merchant fleet to the Alliance's cause. Human Mission 4, Attack on Zuldare, and Orc Mission 4, Assault on Hillsbrad.
Having established some order in the region with a display of naval power, Admiral Proudmoore advises that the time has come to search out the secret lair of the Orcs. Scouts report that this base is located somewhere within the Zuldare region of the Channel Islands, just southeast of Hillsbrad. Lordaeron artificers have completed designs for a foundry. With this new innovation, you will be able to construct transport ships that can ferry your troops across large bodies of water. These vessels should provide great assistance in the completion of your task.
Now that the Armada is well supplied with the precious black substance that your tankers have amassed, Doomhammer feels it is time to make a gruesome example of Hillsbrad. With the aid of new foundry sites that allow you to construct more advanced ships, you may build transports to deliver your forces across the channel to the cowering human settlement. All who oppose the Horde must be taught a harsh lesson. Leave no one alive.
The campaigns diverge here in a way that illustrates the larger strategic picture. The humans are going on the offensive for the first time, hunting down the Orc base of Zuldare, using the new foundry technology to build transport ships and cross open water. The Orcs are doing the same to Hillsbrad. All who oppose the Horde must be taught a harsh lesson. Leave no one alive. Act 2, Khadgar. Both campaigns shift south into the Dwarven Mountain Kingdom. From the manual, we know the dwarves of Ironforge joined the Alliance specifically because the Horde had already started attacking their homeland. Khadgar is Horde-occupied territory. The human campaign is a liberation operation. The Orc campaign is about holding what they have, specifically protecting the oil refineries at Grimbertol that are powering the entire Horde armada. Human Mission 5 and Orc Mission 5, Tol Barad.
Although the Horde has been driven from the shores of Lordaeron, it has left the townships of Hillsbrad and South Shore in ruins. It is clear that the war will cost the Alliance dearly. Impressed with your victories against the Horde and the destruction of the Zuldare base, the High Command has decided to dispatch you and your troops to the main battleground. The forces of Stromgarde and Kul Tiras are stationed along the northern border of Cosmodan, fighting to keep the Orcs from advancing into southern Lordaeron. An Orcish outpost, nestled near the ruins of the ancient dwarven city of Dun Modra, has repeatedly beaten back Alliance troops and ravaged the surrounding farmlands. You must reclaim the nearby island keep at Tol Barad and then launch an attack upon the outpost.
The township of Hillsbrad has been decimated, and throughout the human kingdoms, the rumors of impending doom spread like wildfire. War Chief Doomhammer is pleased with your success and has deemed you worthy of a more difficult task. Troubles have arisen in the dwarven lands of Cosmodan. A task force of Stromgarde warriors have laid siege to Dun Modra, a vital staging area for Horde troops. You ought to retake Dun Modra and then bring your forces to bear against Stromgarde's nearby island citadel of Tol Barad.
Same island, same battle, opposite sides again. The human briefing notes that Stormguard and Kul Tiras's forces are already fighting along Khadgar's northern border. This is the Alliance acting as a coalition, different nations committed to different sectors of a continental front. The Orc briefing introduces Cho'Gall by name for the first time in the campaign, described in the manual's legends section as the first of the Ogre Magi. an initiate of the 5th Circle of the Shadow Council, and someone with special loyalty to Gul'dan. His presence in Khadgar, personally inspecting the refineries, tells you how important the oil supply is to the Horde's war efforts. Human Mission 6, Dun Al-Ghaz.
Following their defeat at Dun Modra, the Orcs were forced to retreat south across the Fandol Valley to a secondary outpost at Dun Al-Ghaz. Lord Lothar, hoping to push the Orcs even further back into Cosmodan, has ordered that you destroy this newly discovered encampment. To aid you in your mission, you will be able to employ knights who are eager to engage the Horde in glorious battle.
The liberation continues. Lothar pushes the Orcs back across the Fandol Valley. The briefing introduces knights as playable units for the first time. The manual describes the Knights of Lordaeron as the fiercest fighting force in the armies of the Alliance. Armoured cavalry carrying warhammers, described as a symbol of order to the peoples of Lordaeron in these dark and chaotic times. The game's escalating unit availability mirrors the narrative escalation. The Alliance is fielding heavier forces as the war expands. Orc Mission 6, The Badlands.
Doomhammer has sent word that the Ogre Mage Cho'Gall, chieftain of the Twilight's Hammer clan, is personally inspecting the refinery at Grim Batal. Cho'Gall and his convoy will be traveling through the Badlands of Cosmodan, and an ambush by Stromgarde warriors is expected. The War Chief expects you to safeguard Cho'Gall and his minions through this region. Should he die, your life will be forfeit as well.
This is a protection mission. Cho'Gall is travelling through Khadgar and Stormguard warriors are planning an ambush. The briefing adds a line that deserves a pause. Should he die, your life will be forfeit as well. Doomhammer's command structure is unambiguous. Cho'Gall matters enough that failure to protect him is a death sentence for the field commander. Cho'Gall is tied to Gul'dan and the Shadow Council, and Doomhammer, whatever his suspicions about the Council's loyalties, needs their sorcerers functional for the war. Human Mission 7, Grim Batal, and Orc Mission 7, The Fall of Stormguard.
Cho'Gall reports that the Cosmodan refineries are well maintained and fulfilling their quotas. The Horde will now have more than enough oil to mount a fierce campaign in the lands far to the north. Only the troublesome human defenders of Stromgarde remain to be dealt with before sending the Horde on its next sojourn. The human fleet has captured a group of our transports just south of Stromgarde. Recapture these vessels and then lay waste to their capital.
Advanced scouts report that they have located Grim Batal, the primary base of the Horde's refinery operations in Cosmodan. Seeing a chance to strike a decisive blow against the Horde, Lord Lothar has ordered that you infiltrate Grim Batal and put an end to all Orcish activity there. Once Grim Batal has been destroyed, Lothar believes that the Orcs will have no further use for Cosmodan, thus pulling their forces back to the mainland of Azeroth. Victory could secure the shores of Lordaeron and greatly impede the Horde offensive.
The pivotal missions of Act 2. The human campaign strikes at Grim Batal, the Horde's primary refinery operation in Khadgar, with Lothar arguing that destroying it will render the region strategically useless to the Horde and pull their forces back to the mainland. The Orc campaign simultaneously attacks Stromgarde itself. The manual's Nations section described Stromgarde as a strict martial culture with a long history of warfare against the Trolls, the most war-ready human nation in the Alliance. Taking it out weakens the Alliance's eastern flank permanently. Both campaigns succeed in their objectives. Khadgar is contested, damaged, and moving towards resolution, but the war is far from over. Both sides are now pushing north toward Quel'Thalas. Act 3, Quel'Thalas and the Northlands. This is where the war gets devastating for the non-human members of the Alliance. The Elves of Quel'Thalas are fighting on their home territory now, and the Horde's objectives in this act aren't just military, they're strategic erasure. Human Mission 8, Tyr's Hand, and Orc Mission 8, the Runestone at Caer Darrow.
With the destruction of Dun Modra and the downfall of Grim Batal, the Orcs have completely withdrawn their armies from Cosmodan. While your victories have been notable, the menace of the Horde still hangs over the head of the Alliance. Lord Lothar has stationed your troops in the Northlands to protect the borders of Quel'Thalas. Troubles have arisen in the township of Tyr's Hand, with the local peasant population in a state of minor revolt. You must quell this uprising and then summon the Knights of the Silver Hand to watch over the populace. To maintain order in the region, you must search out all of the Horde forces in the area and destroy them.
Your forces have been assigned to an area along the southern border of the Elven Kingdom of Quel'Thalas. Gul'dan, hoping to sow the seeds of chaos among the human and elven allies, has located a mysterious elven artifact near the keep of Khadgar. This huge, monolithic runestone is guarded by a human castle on the small island located in the middle of Daromir Lake. You must destroy the forces that guard this relic and gain control of the runestone for use by the Horde.
The arc briefing for this act's opening mission is important for a reason that won't pay off until later. Gul'dan has located an elven runestone near Khadgar and wants it captured. The manual's Places of Mystery section explains exactly what this runestone is, an ancient monolith erected by the elven druids and inscribed with powerful runes of protection and warding. What exactly Gul'dan wants it for becomes clear in the next section. The human briefing, by contrast, is domestic, a peasant uprising at Tyr's Hand that needs suppressing, followed by calling the paladins to maintain order. The Silver Hand appear here in the campaign for the first time as a named organisation. Their purpose in the briefing, to watch over the populace to maintain order, connects directly to the manual's description of them as warriors whose purpose is to defend and shepherd the war-torn populace of Lordaeron. They are not just fighters here, they're the Alliance's attempt to hold civilian society together while the war rages on around it. Human Mission 9, the Battle of Daromir, and Orc Mission 9, the Raising of Tyr's Hand.
With his paladins keeping vigilant watch over the Northlands, the Archbishop's assistant, Uther Lightbringer of Lordaeron, has come to offer comfort to those who are suffering the misfortunes of war. Lord Lothar has entrusted you with the protection of the Paladin's commander and his entourage as they travel to the island township of Khadgar.
With the capture of the Elven Runestone, Gul'dan has been able to warp the power it contains to mutate an entire legion of his loyal and ruthless ogres into wielders of arcane magics. Along with this transformation, these ogre magi have been granted deadly magics and a malicious cunning rivaling that of Gul'dan himself. You are to employ the Ogre Magi in the creation and defense of a fortress at the mouth of Tyr's Bay, cutting off the human supply lines into Quel'Thalas.
The arc briefing for Mission 9 reveals what Gul'dan did with the runestone. Gul'dan, hoping to sow the seeds of chaos among the human and elven allies, has located a mysterious elven artifact near the keep of Khadgar. Gul'dan has been able to warp the power it contains to mutate an entire legion of his loyal and ruthless ogres into wielders of arcane magics, the Ogre Magi. The runestone that the elves inscribed with protective runes has been twisted into the source of arcane power for the Horde's most dangerous new sorcerers. The human mission, meanwhile, sends Uther Lightbringer himself on a pastoral mission to Khadgar to comfort those suffering the war's effects. The briefing names him specifically as the Archbishop's assistant. Uther's role at this point in the story is still forming. He's a paladin commander, but the manual and campaign both frame him as deeply tied to the Church's care for civilians, not just the military chain of command. Orc Missions 10 and 11, Strathholm and the Fall of Quel'Thalas.
Strathholm, the chief source of Alliance oil in the north, is preparing to deliver massive amounts of oil to the kingdoms in western Lordaeron. You must sabotage their refineries and platforms to halt this shipment. Once Stratholm's ability to gather and process oil is destroyed, proceed to crush any and all resistance offered by the Alliance. With the destruction of Strathholm, the Alliance supply lines to Quel'Thalas have been severed. Only a handful of human and elven defenders remain to safeguard the ancient elf kingdom from the onslaught of the Horde. The enchanted domain of the elves has inspired Gul'dan to unleash his most perverted creation, The Death Knights. Born from the corpses of the fallen Knights of Azeroth, these once proud defenders of humanity now serve the Horde in a blasphemous state of eternal undeath, conjuring dark spells of necromantic horror upon their terrified foes. These Death Knights seek to unleash their wrath upon any foolish enough to stand in their way.
These two missions together represent the deliberate destruction of an entire civilization's infrastructure. Mission 10 targets Strathhome, specifically because it's the chief source of the Alliance oil in the north. Cut off the fuel supply and the Alliance's naval operation in the north collapses. Mission 11, The Dead Rise as Quel'Thalas falls, introduces the Death Knights into the campaign by name and explains exactly what they are. Formed from the corpses of the fallen Knights of Azeroth, these once proud defenders of humanity now serve the Horde in a blasphemous state of eternal undeath. From the manual's lore, the campaign level devastation of Quel'Thalas is the accumulated trauma that defines the elves going forward. The Sunwell isn't directly mentioned in these briefings, but the manual notes it as the source of the elves' magical power rooted in the land itself. What gets done to Quel'Thalas in his missions is part of why Illyria Windrunner, who we'll meet in Beyond the Dark Portal, is searching through ashes for the remains of her family. It doesn't fall completely here, close enough that everything after carries the weight of this mission. Human Mission 10, The Prisoners, and Human Mission 11, Betrayal and the Destruction of Alterac.
Following the battle at Kyodero, a number of renegade Alterac soldiers were captured. A crew of Alterac sailors were also caught assisting the Horde during the battle and have been placed under close guard. Lord Lothar sends word that the Alliance has been betrayed. Lord Perinold, sovereign ruler of Alterac, has been working with the Horde since the beginning of the war. It was Perinold who provided the Orcs with the routes of the Elven Strike Force passing through Terran Mill. The rebellion at Tyr's Hand was also started by Alterac spies in hope of concealing the Orcish mining facility located there. The High Command has decreed that the nation of Alterac has committed treason against the Alliance, and their union with the Orcish hordes must be broken. You must free those unjustly held by Perinold and enlist their aid in launching an attack against Alterac's capital.
The Alterac betrayal paying off. The human campaign has been seeding this since the manual described Perinold as a man convinced the Alliance would fail and that only surrender would save him. Mission 10 captures Alterac soldiers caught assisting the Horde. Mission 11 confirms what the manual already told us. Perinold provided the Horde with the routes of the Elven Strike Force through Terran Mill back in Mission 2. The ambush in Act 1 was Alterac intelligence. The rebellion at Tyr's Hand was Alterac sabotage. The mission briefing connects every thread, then orders the destruction of Alterac's capital. The manual's aftermath section tells us Alterac's fate carries beyond the war itself. In World of Warcraft, Alterac is a destroyed ruin, and the story of Perinold's collaboration is still embedded in the zone's history. Everything that ruin represents starts here. Act 4, Tides of Darkness. Both campaigns converge on their conclusions, and this is where they diverge most significantly. The human campaign ends at Blackrock Spire with Lothar's death and Terralian's victory. The Orc campaign ends at Lordaeron's capital with a conquest that the lore tells us never actually happened. Human Mission 12, The Battle at Crestfall. Orc Mission 12, The Tomb of Sargeras.
With the destruction of Alterac, the Orcish armies in the north have staged a massive retreat. Admiral Proudmoore sends word that Gnomish submarines have located the Horde's main naval base near Crestfall. Proudmoore believes that the Orcs plan to launch the remainder of their armada and retreat to the mainland of Azeroth. Lord Lothar has ordered that you destroy the base at Crestfall before the fleet can escape.
The Northlands have fallen, and now only the western regions of Lordaeron stand defiant before the ultimate supremacy of the Horde. As the Orc clans prepare for their final, massive campaign against the weakening Alliance, the War Chief sends you ill tidings. Gul'dan and his Storm Reaver clan have betrayed the Horde and coerced the Twilight's Hammer clan to set sail and search for an ancient tomb said to be buried beneath the waves. An infiltrator under the direction of Doomhammer reports that Gul'dan has indeed raised volcanic islands from the ocean floor and thus has opened a hidden vault. While it is unknown what the Great Warlock has released from this tomb, the War Chief has issued this command: destroy the renegade clans and return with the head of Gul'dan.
Orc Mission 12's briefing is the pivotal moment of the entire war, and it deserves to be read carefully. Doomhammer receives the news of Gul'dan's betrayal mid-campaign. The Storm Reavers and Twilight's Hammer clans have defected, sailed for a tomb beneath the waves. The briefing orders their destruction and demands Gul'dan's head. The impossible choice: push on to total victory of the Alliance or turn back to prevent the Horde from fracturing permanently, is left implicit in the briefing. The mission itself is the answer. Doomhammer turns back. The human briefing for Mission 12 is almost elegiac by contrast. Gnomish submarines have located the Horde's main naval base near Crestfall. Proudmoore orders its destruction before the Orc fleet can escape, and the war is turning. The Alliance doesn't fully understand yet why, and they don't know about Gul'dan's treachery, but the momentum has shifted. Human Mission 13, Assault on Blackrock Spire.
The remnants of the routed Orcish fleet have managed to reach the northern shores of Azeroth. Admiral Proudmoore believes that the Horde will attempt to reinforce their main fortress at Blackrock Spire. Leading a large strike force of Lordaeron troops, Lord Lothar was sent to attempt a parley with the Orcish chieftain Orgrim Doomhammer. No reports have been heard in days. Assuming the worst, Admiral Proudmoore and King Terenas agree that it falls upon you to stage a final siege upon Blackrock Spire. The feral dwarves of the Northern Wildlands have offered the service of their Griffin Riders to assist in the decimation of the foul orcs that have desecrated their homeland and slain the leader of the Alliance forces.
This briefing is one of the most significant in the entire campaign, and it arrives as quietly as possible. Lothar has led a strike force to Blackrock Spire to attempt to parley with Doomhammer. No reports have been heard in days. Proudmoore and Terenas assume the worst. The briefing then hands command to the player. You are now leading the final assault because Lothar is gone. The manual's aftermath section confirms it plainly. Lothar died at Blackrock Spire. Turalyon, one of the first paladins who watched Lothar die and secretly harbours a deep regret of his inability to save the Great Knight, takes command and carries the battle through. Doomhammer is captured and the Horde breaks. This scene is also covered in Midnight, and I must say they did a good job at portraying Turalyon in this crucial moment. Human Mission 14, The Great Portal, and Orc Mission 14, The Fall of Lordaeron.
The Orcs have been driven from the Northlands as the hulking remains of Blackrock Spire lay silent amongst the freed lands of Azeroth. The battered remains of the once mighty Horde have rallied to protect their last bastion of hope, the Great Portal. With Lord Lothar dead, you have been given the duty of leading the forces of Lordaeron to ultimate victory over the Horde. A victory that lies with the destruction of the Great Portal itself.
The alabaster parapets of Lordaeron's capital loom before you in the distance. The proud, defiant armies of the Alliance stand resolute in their final, fleeting moments. All that remains is the shrill, clarion call to battle and the fulfillment of our destiny. The tides of darkness are now at hand.
So, the campaigns end here. The Orc ending is the non-canonical one here. Lordaeron falls, the Horde triumphs, the victory that the lore explicitly overwrites. The human ending is the canonical one. The portal is destroyed, the war is won, and the victory text is deliberately unglamorous.
Quiet settles over the black morass, with the blackened, burning remains of the cursed portal serving as a solemn reminder of the evil that once stood here. After the long and savage battle, you stand victorious over the tattered remnants of the once mighty Orcish hordes. Those orcs that survived the conflict have fled to the northeast in hopes of escaping your vengeance. You allow them their reprieve, knowing that the power of the Horde has been forever broken and that the lands of Azeroth belong to its native sons and daughters once again.
The war is finally over. The Dark Portal is destroyed, but the rift that created it is still there, and the manual's Aftermath section is already telling us what comes next. The pivotal moment of the entire Second War doesn't happen on a battlefield. It doesn't involve Lothar or Doomhammer or any of the named heroes the manual has been building toward. It happens on the ocean, in the dark, when one man decides that a war he helped start was always secondary to something he wanted for himself. We know from Gul'dan's own history exactly what he's been doing since the Death Knights were created. He's been waiting. He wrote it plainly at the end of his account. I will be patient and bide my time. The Stormreaver clan, his clan, built specifically to protect him from Doomhammer, has quietly been accumulating ships. The Death Knights, loyal in appearance to the Warchief and in reality to Gul'dan, have been doing their jobs and biding their time, and Gul'dan has been watching the war progress, looking for the moment when Doomhammer is most committed, most exposed, most unable to respond. The moment arrives in Act 4. The Orc Mission 12 briefing, the Tomb of Sargeras, delivers the news the way Doomhammer would have received it, as a report from an infiltrator mid-campaign while the Horde is on the verge of its greatest victory. Let's sit with that briefing just described. The Horde's armies are deep in Alliance territory. The western regions of Lordaeron are the last thing standing between the Horde and total domination of the continent. Doomhammer is at the threshold of winning a war that started decades ago on a dying world, and in the middle of all that, Gul'dan takes the Stormreaver clan, takes Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer, takes the ships he has been quietly building throughout the entire campaign, and sails for the Tomb of Sargeras. He doesn't defect to the Alliance, he doesn't surrender, he simply leaves mid-war because the war was only a means to an end, and the end is now within reach. The manual's Orc clan entries tell us exactly who has gone. The Stormreaver clan entry describes them as a small but powerful clan, under Gul'dan's absolute control, founded specifically to protect him from Doomhammer, their entire purpose being his personal insurance policy. The Twilight's Hammer entry is even more revealing, obsessed with the notion that the Horde is the harbinger of apocalyptic doom to all the lands that it ravages. The Twilight's Hammer feels a sacrosanct gratification in the destruction of all that it encounters. Their loyalty to the Horde, the manual notes, is not as strong as its belief is in the sacred mission of oblivion. Cho'Gall's clan was always going to follow Gul'dan when the moment came. The war was never their true purpose either. What Doomhammer faces now is an impossible choice that the briefing leaves unstated but unavoidable. He can push on, keeping the offensive rolling, take Lordaeron's capital while his armies are at peak strength, win the war. Or he can turn back, hunt down Gul'dan, and deal with the internal fracture before it destroys the Horde from within. Two of his clans have defected mid-campaign. The Death Knights, his supposedly loyal undead warriors, were Gul'dan's creatures all along. If he continues the offensive with a fractured, partially betrayed force, and if Gul'dan reaches the tomb and claims whatever power is inside it, Doomhammer will have won Azeroth and lost the Horde simultaneously. So he turns back. The Horde, on the verge of crushing Lordaeron, wheels around. Doomhammer's Blackrock forces pursue Gul'dan's fleet to the tomb. What follows is civil war on the water, the Blackrock clan slaughtering the Stormreavers and Twilight's Hammer in the ruins of the tomb itself. Two of the Horde's most powerful clans annihilated not by the Alliance but by their own Warchief. Gul'dan still does reach the tomb though. The manual's Places of Mystery section describes it. Buried underneath the sea for over 1,000 years, the ancient tomb of Sargeras waits to be discovered by any foolish enough to pursue its secrets. And then, crucially, Gul'dan, believing that the tomb contains power absolute, hopes to find and claim it as his own. Success may indeed make him a living god. The manual is telling you, in the present tense of the game's setting, that Gul'dan believes this. What it doesn't tell you, though, is whether the belief is correct. The Creatures of the Land section offers a hint, though, describing demons as ancient and corrupt denizens of the lower planes, and noting that it is rumoured that Gul'dan has entered into a pact with a sect of demons loyal to the demon lord Sargeras, who are willing to aid the Warlock in finding their master's tomb. Later lore, established in Warcraft III and expanded in World of Warcraft, tells us what Gul'dan actually found. Not the power of a god, demons. The tomb is full of them, and they tear him apart. This is the end of Gul'dan, the man who engineered the entire First War, who built the Shadow Council, who manufactured Blackhand, who created the Death Knights, who played Doomhammer into sparing his life, who spent years building towards a single moment, dies in a dark ruin beneath the sea, killed by the thing he was trying to claim. The manual's present tense framing of his ambition, hopes to find, may indeed make him a living god, turns out to be the last record of a man who never gets to update it. And the Alliance, which has been losing for the entire campaign, suddenly finds itself fighting a horde that has just gutted 2 of its own clans, lost its most powerful sorcerer, and has its war chief make a strategically ruinous decision to preserve internal unity. Lothar and Terralion press the advantage immediately. The campaign carries south all the way back to Blackrock Spire. One thing worth flagging here for later, Gul'dan's treachery doesn't just end him, it ends the Stormreaver and Twilight's Hammer clans entirely. The manual's aftermath section confirms this. The Twilight Hammer and Stormreaver clans were decimated by their own brethren in the civil wars that erupted during the war. Not destroyed by the Alliance, destroyed by Doomhammer's Blackrock forces in retaliation for what Gul'dan did. The Twilight's Hammer doesn't disappear from Warcraft lore after this, but what it becomes in later games is so far removed from the clan Cho'Gall led that it almost is unrecognisable. The name survives, the apocalyptic philosophy survives in a twisted form. The clan itself is effectively dead here, on the water, outside a tomb that swallowed the man who led them into it. The war turns on this moment. Everything that follows, Lothar's assault on Blackrock Spire, his death, Terralion's victory, the capture of Doomhammer, the end of the Second War, is a consequence of Gul'dan choosing a tomb over the war. He waited his whole life for that tomb, and it killed him. The war is won, and immediately everything becomes complicated. The manual's third lore document, The Aftermath of the Second War, has no named narrator. Aegwyn's account and Gul'dan's history both announce themselves on their title pages. This one just begins. It opens with a decorated capital letter, the way a medieval chronicle would, and it reads like one, a record of events without a clear personal voice, which after the intense subjectivity of the first 2 documents, feels almost like a deliberate choice. The person writing this either doesn't want to be identified, or the events themselves are the point rather than the perspective. The section opens like this. For long months, the forces of the Alliance worked to seek out the renegade orcs that had gone into hiding after the fall of the Dark Portal. The Blackrock, Dragonmaw and Blacktooth Grin clans were captured by the Alliance and herded into guarded reserves and prison camps. 3 clans captured and interned. 2 clans, the Stormreaver and Twilight's Hammer, already annihilated in the civil war Gul'dan caused. 1 clan, the Burning Blade, was destroyed by Uther Lightbringer's forces during the final battle at the portal, according to the Aftermath text. That leaves the Bleeding Hollow under Kil'jaeden Deadeye, who the manual says managed to evade capture entirely. Only the Bleeding Hollow clan was left unaccounted for, as the cunning Kil'jaeden Deadeye managed to evade the best efforts of the Alliance to capture his clan. Elven scouts were placed on continual patrol within the Black Morass, searching for any sign of the renegade Bleeding Hollow. The entire horde effectively reduced to 1 clan still at large, and the Alliance's response to this near total victory is to immediately start falling apart. Doomhammer is the hinge point. The Aftermath section describes his status carefully. Orgrim Doomhammer, the war chief of the Horde, was placed under arrest and kept as an honoured prisoner under the care of King Terenas of Lordaeron. An honoured prisoner. Not a dungeon, not a public execution. Terenas keeps him personally under his own care, and, the manual implies, talks to him. Having discussed the obvious benefits of a treaty with Doomhammer, King Terenas fervently hoped that the orcs could be kept pacified long enough to eventually lose their lust for conquest. This is a remarkable position for a king to take after a war that devastated 2 continents. Terenas is looking at Doomhammer and seeing not just a defeated enemy, but a potential instrument of long-term peace. If the interned orcs can be held and managed long enough, maybe the next generation won't want to fight. It's idealistic to a point of naivety, but it's also genuinely humane, and the manual presents it without irony. Terenas does believe this. Not everyone, though, shares his view. Forrest Trollbane of Stormguard and Greymane of Gul'dan both disagreed vehemently with Terenas, resolving that the orcs were too great a threat to be left alive. Two names worth noting carefully here: Forest Trollbane, who committed Stormguard to the Alliance early, who the manual described as quick to answer the call to battle, whose kingdom took the brunt of the Horde's eastern offensive, now wants the prisoners exterminated. He's not being bloodthirsty here without reason. His kingdom was specifically targeted and partially destroyed. The Fall of Stormguard mission in the Orc campaign was ordered because Trollbane was considered one of the more formidable opponents the Alliance has. He's seen what the Horde does up close, and he doesn't believe pacification is possible. Greymane is the other name, and Greymane never even joined the Alliance. The manual described him at the beginning as convinced that his own armies can deal with any threat. He sat the war out entirely, his kingdom untouched because of his isolationism. Now he's weighing in on the fate of the prisoners for the war he didn't fight, arguing for extermination from a position of perfect safety. The manual doesn't editorialize on this irony, it just states the facts and lets the reader sit with them. After months of debate and frustration, both leaders withdrew the support of their nations from the Alliance. Stormguard and Gul'dan leave. The coalition that Lothar built through sheer force of personal authority, the coalition that won the war, dissolves within the first few months after victory. The manual gives the reason plainly. Azeroth alone stood fast in its commitment to the Alliance, even with the dynamic young Varian Wrynn seated upon Azeroth's throne. The distance between the kingdoms of Azeroth and Lordaeron made their union a hollow one. Varian Wrynn, the same boy Lothar carried out of Stormwind on a boat, now sitting on the throne, governing a kingdom that exists on borrowed time and foreign charity. Stormwind hasn't been rebuilt yet. The people of Azeroth are still refugees in Lordaeron, settled near Southshore. The manual's nations section describes them as having pledged their loyalty to the Alliance and being battle-hardened and brave, seeking retribution for the loss of their homeland. That retribution has come. The homeland still needs rebuilding, and the alliance they fought for is already fracturing around them. The aftermath section then pivots to the portal. The war is over, the Horde is defeated, but the rift that Medivh opened is still there. The Kirin Tor of Dalaran respond to this in the only way a magical research organisation can. They build a citadel directly above it to keep watch. The Kirin Tor of Dalaran travelled to the lands overlooking the ruins on the site and constructed the citadel of Neverguard to serve as a guardian should the rift ever open again. Neverguard. That name will matter. The mages watched the rift for years. The aftermath section gives the timeline precisely. The war ends, the internment camps fill, the political arguments rage, Stormguard and Gul'dan depart, the fragile remaining alliance settles into an uneasy peace, and then, years later, something happens. On the eve of summer in the year 606, a freak darkness swept across the Black Morass. All attempts by the mages at Neverguard to probe into the darkness were futile, but they could sense that the rift was growing once more. Then, the sounds came. The manual describes them in sequence, each one arriving and disappearing before the next, like something moving fast through the dark. Then, as if from a dream, the mages heard the sounds of a marching army, hundreds strong. The sound of armour and sword charged through the ruined portal, and then as quickly fell silent. The thunderous shrieks of dragons crying to the skies passed overhead, and then as suddenly disappeared into the gloom. Venomous undead whispers, barely audible under a clash of metal plates, seem to echo and repeat one phrase: "We will return." When the darkness lifts, the portal is visible again. The mages go to investigate, and the only evidence that anything happened is hoof prints in the mud. The Bleeding Hollow clan, Kil'jaeden Deadeye's people, the one clan that never got captured, that the Elven Scouts spent years searching for in the Black Morass, has gone home. The manual closes the Second War section here, and then gives us the other side of that crossing in a final passage. The Bleeding Hollow crossed over into Draenor and rejoined the old clans that have never seen the fields of Azeroth. To many, the warriors of the Bleeding Hollow were considered mighty heroes, as these orcs had been living in the human lands for over 30 years. 30 years. The Horde crossed through Medivh's portal in 583. The Bleeding Hollow crosses back in 606. They've been living in occupied and then post-war Azeroth for more than 3 decades. The clans that stayed behind on Draenor, who never crossed, who only heard heard about Azeroth secondhand treat the returning warriors like heroes. Kil'jaeden Deadeye is already a legend, and waiting for him on the other side is someone the manual identifies as Gul'dan's original teacher, the shaman whose jealousy Gul'dan described at the very opening of his history. Kil'jaeden met with the elder shaman Ner'zhul, who now controlled the remaining clans in Draenor. The shaman ordered that the newly arrived Death Knights, trolls and dragons were to be used by all the clans in conjuncture. Ner'zhul also informed Kil'jaeden of his plan to retrieve certain artifacts from Azeroth as to open rifts into other worlds and take the Orcish hordes to great victories beyond the Dark Portal. The illustration on this page is captioned, "Kil'jaeden leads the remnants of this clan through the portal." The Second War is over, the Dark Portal is rubble, the Alliance is fracturing, the Horde is interned, and on the other side of a rift that the mages of Nevergard are watching very carefully, a new plan is already forming. That's what Beyond the Dark Portal is all about. Warcraft II Beyond the Dark Portal was the one and only expansion set for Warcraft II, released in 1996. The expansion opens with a cinematic that bridges directly from the end of Tides of Darkness. It gives you 3 sentences and then stops on a single image.
The Orcish hordes lay vanquished as the triumphant armies of the Alliance stood vigil over the evil gateway that had brought the Orcs into Azeroth. Calling upon the arcane powers of the archwizard Khadgar, the fury of the earth and skies were unleashed upon the Dark Portal to destroy it once and for all. Blinding light dimmed, an eerie glow fell across the black morass. For though the portal was destroyed, the rift that joined these worlds at war yet remained.
That last line is the entire premise of the expansion. The portal is rubble, the rift is not. And on the other side of that rift, as the manual's aftermath section already told us, Ner'zhul is waiting. A structural note before we get into the missions. Beyond the Dark Portal does something neither Warcraft I nor Warcraft II did. For the first time, the two campaigns are explicitly intertwined. They are not parallel versions of the same war. They are two perspectives on the same sequence of events. The same missions, the same locations, the same battles, seen from opposite sides. The divergences between them are small. This means that unlike the main game, where the Orc and Human campaigns were separate war narratives, in Beyond the Dark Portal you are watching one story being told twice. What's also new is that named heroes who matter to the missions. Lose them and you lose a scenario. This is the first time the series has done this to date. Units with faces and names and deaths that actually count. It's the format that Warcraft III will build its entire campaign structure around, and it starts right here. The Orc campaign, Ner'zhul's drive for the artifacts. The Legends of the Land section in the manual identified 5 key figures on the Horde side. Grom Hellscream of the Warsong clan, Kargath Bladefist of the Shattered Hand, Terran Gorfiend the Death Knight, Dentarg the Ogre Mage, and Deathwing. The Orc campaign is a story of Ner'zhul assembling these pieces and deploying them towards 3 artifacts. Orc Mission 1, Slayer of the Shadow Moon.
Though the Elder Shaman Ner'zhul holds the rank of War Chief of Draenor, your position as Slayer to the Shadow Moon clan places the duty of leading their armies into battle upon your head. Ner'zhul has discovered how the rift was first formed and now covets the idea of not only reopening the gateway into Azeroth, but of creating new portals and seeking out even more worlds to control. You must subjugate an order of Death Knights who have secured the knowledge needed to rebuild the Dark Portal. The renegade Ogre Mage Moglord of the Laughing Skull clan has taken control of these Dark Soldiers and is seeking to create a powerful spell with the aid of that necromantic magic. His life is also forfeit. Although we have no dragons to command, we have learned that Grom Hellscream, leader of the Warsong clan, has been captured by the Laughing Skull and is being held prisoner. Free him, and he will surely aid you in your battles.
The first mission is a purge. Ner'zhul's problem is internal before it's external. The renegade ogre mage Mogor of the Laughing Skull clan has taken control of a group of Death Knights and is using their necromantic knowledge for his own purposes. Before Ner'zhul can reopen the portal, he needs those Death Knights subjugated and their knowledge recovered. Mogor has to die. A secondary objective is Grom Hellscream, who the Laughing Skull have captured and are holding prisoner. The manual's legends section describes Grom as a ferocious as his battle cry, someone who distrusts the shaman Ner'zhul but will lead his clan screaming onto the fields of bloody death regardless. His introduction here is as a rescue objective before he becomes a named hero, the campaign establishing him as valuable and independent and only conditionally loyal, which is exactly what the Warcraft III version of his character will be decades later. Orc Mission 2, The Skull of Gul'dan.
The Skull of Gul'dan is a powerful artifact and essential for resurrecting the Dark Portal. A pathetic orc captain of the Bone Chewer clan wears the skull as a symbol of his station and does not know of its true power. Ner'zhul has sent the ogre hero Dentar to influence warriors from the Thunderlord clan to join in the battle against the Bone Chewers. You will also be assisted by the warriors of the Shattered Hand and their leader, Khadgar Bladefist. Move quickly to the Thunderlord village and raise an army to crush the Bone Chewer captain and win the Skull of Gul'dan.
The Skull of Gul'dan is being worn as a trophy by a Bone Chewer clan captain who doesn't understand what he's carrying. The manual tells us Gul'dan's skull is a powerful magical artifact. The Death Knights in the manual unit description carry jeweled truncheons infused with necromantic power, and the skull is the source from which that power ultimately flows. The Bone Chewer captain is wandering around with something that could reshape reality, using it as a decoration. Ner'zhul sends Dentar to rally the Thunderlord clan against the Bone Chewers. Khadgar Bladefist and his Shattered Hand join the assault. The manual's legend section describes Khadgar with admirable economy, a razor-sharp scythe setting in place of his severed left hand. Khadgar is always willing to engage in frenzied combat. The Shattered Hand clan entry explains why. Members of the clan offer their left hands to be broken or completely removed as proof of loyalty, their ruined stumps often replaced by some sort of crude weapon or tool. Khadgar took this further than most. Orc Mission 3, Thunderlord and Bone Chewer.
Ner'zhul has met with opposition to his plans from the leaders of both the Thunderlord and Bone Chewer clans. They desire to journey to Azeroth and have their clans triumph where Doomhammer had failed. This is a vision not shared by your war chief. You are to lead the forces of Shadowmoon against the strongholds of both Bone Chewer and Thunderlord. Once these weak fools and their clans are removed, no others will dare to interfere with the dark schemes of Ner'zhul.
The Thunderlord and Bone Chewer clans both refuse Ner'zhul's plan. They want to go back to Azeroth and finish what Doomhammer started. Ner'zhul's response is instant and total: destroy them both. This mission is the moment that establishes what kind of leader Ner'zhul actually is. He doesn't negotiate, he doesn't try to persuade. Two clans stand in the way of his plan, and within one briefing they cease to exist. The mechanism is the same one that defined every Orcish leader before him: overwhelming violence against anyone who questioned his plan. Gul'dan did it to the Warlocks outside the Shadow Council, Doomhammer did it to Gul'dan's Warlocks, and Ner'zhul does it to entire clans. The pattern still holds. Orc Mission 4, The Rift Awakened.
From the ranks of the Death Knights comes Terran Gorefiend. The death of Gul'dan has placed these Dark Horsemen under the authority of no clan, but Gorefiend shares the desires of Ner'zhul to open numerous portals. He offers his influence over the Death Knights of Draenor in exchange for a world that the Death Knights can claim as their own. Using the knowledge gained at the defeat of the Ogre Mage Mogor and the necromantic powers of the Death Knights, Ner'zhul successfully awakens the arcane energies of the Mystic Rift. As you lead the forces of Shadowmoon into Azeroth, a human battlement that has been constructed to keep the portal closed stands before you. Destroy this citadel and claim the lands that surround the rift.
Teron Garfiend enters. The manual's legends section gives him a precise description. The ancient arc spirit of Garfiend rides within the decaying body of this fallen knight of Azeroth. Malicious and extremely cunning, Garfiend desires to open his own portal from Draenor and claim a world for his own. He makes a deal with Ner'zhul, his influence over the Death Knights of Draenor, in exchange for a world the Death Knights can call their own. It is, almost exactly, the same deal Gul'dan made with Medivh. A powerful figure offers knowledge in exchange for a world. The parallel is not accidental. Using Mogor's defeated knowledge and the Death Knight's power, Ner'zhul successfully awakens the rift. The Horde crosses into Azeroth and immediately destroys the citadel of Nevergard, the fortress the Kirin Tor built specifically to watch over the rift. The Watchers are the first casualties, and the war begins. Orc Mission 5, Dragons of Blackrock Spire.
When the Horde was driven back into the Black Morass, we were able to only take a small portion of our forces through the Dark Portal before it was destroyed. With the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza rescued and the Dragonmaw clan captured by the Alliance, we were no longer able to command these great winged beasts. While securing the rift and beginning construction of a new portal, your encampment is approached by a haggard grunt. His uniform marks him as a warrior of the Bleeding Hollow. He tells how those of his clan who did not return through the portal have eluded capture and imprisonment by the Alliance armies. You also learn that many of the dragons that were once enslaved have continued to feed upon humans and are now roosting at Blackrock Spire. If you can break through the human defenses and gain the trust of these creatures, perhaps you can bring Ner'zhul powerful allies.
The briefing here introduces Deathwing's situation carefully. The Dragonmaw clan, who used shamanistic magic to enslave the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza and control the Horde's dragons during the Second War, have been captured by the Alliance. Without the Dragonmaw's control magic, the enslaved dragons are free, and some of them, as the briefing notes with a detail that should unsettle anyone reading it, have grown to crave the taste for battle, and have become willing allies with the Orcs under the leadership of a great black dragon known only as Deathwing. The manual's legends section describes Deathwing as second in power to only Alexstrasza herself, and notes that during the Second War, goblin alchemists adhered plates of adamantine steel to the black dragon. This made the great beast virtually invulnerable to almost any physical attack. He is not controllable through magic, he cannot be enslaved the way other dragons were. He chooses his alliances, and right now, he's chosen the Horde, for reasons the mission will make clear. Orc Mission 6, New Stormwind.
Finding the survivors of the Bleeding Hollow clan and gaining the dragon Deathwing as an ally has strengthened your position in Azeroth. Your success has not gone unnoticed by Ner'zhul. He rewards your victories by assigning you a dangerous mission. Garfiend has sensed a focus of arcane energies within a castle that has been raised upon the foundations of Stormwind Keep. Ner'zhul believes that this can only be the fabled Book of Medivh. Only a fool would leave such power unguarded, so your assault upon this new Stormwind castle will be a bloody one.
Stormwind has been rebuilt. The stonemasons who fled Azeroth after the First War, mentioned at the end of Warcraft I's lore, have done their work. New Stormwind stands on the foundations of the old one, and inside of it, Teron Garfiend has sensed an arcane focus that can only be the Book of Medivh. The assault on New Stormwind is one of the expansion's most symbolically loaded missions. The first game ended with Stormwind burning. This game has the Horde attacking a city that was built from those ashes. The manual's aftermath section described Varian Rin sitting on Stormwind's throne, the boy Lothar carried out on a boat, now a king. His city is being attacked again, the cycle is brutal and deliberate. Orc Missions 7 and 8, The Seas of Azeroth and Assault on Kul Tiras.
After taking the castle of New Stormwind, you search in vain for the Book of Medivh. As you sift through the rubble of the fallen human fortress, you discover the corpse of a footman with a human dagger in his side. The spies of the Bleeding Hollow clan have confirmed that this blade was crafted by the weaponsmiths of Alterac. These humans are the same that were willing to betray their own brothers, and it may be that they have stolen the Book of Medivh for their own purposes. They will regret their decision. To journey to Alterac, you must first establish naval superiority over the warships of the Alliance. The base at Kul'taras has always been the humans' key to the might of their armada. You must establish a strong presence in the Great Sea in order to destroy Kul'taras and prepare your way into Alterac. Now that you have cleared a path to the island of Kul'taras, you must send your wave riders against the core of the human fleet. With the naval forces of the humans defeated, the Horde will have free reign of the Great Sea. We have also learned that Admiral Proudmoore is no longer a member of the Alliance and does not have the support of their armies. Remove his armada, and Kul'taras will fall.
After raiding New Stormwind and finding it stripped, the book moved before they got there. Taken by Alterac agents according to the Bleeding Hollow spies, the Horde turns to the sea. Kul'taras stands between them and Alterac. The briefing for Mission 8 contains a detail worth flagging. We have also learned that Admiral Proudmoore is no longer a member of the Alliance and does not have the support of their armies. Daelin Proudmoore, Lothar's longtime friend, the man who committed his entire merchant fleet to the Alliance cause, Jaina Proudmoore's father, has apparently broken with the Alliance in the post-war political fallout. The briefing doesn't explain why, it just notes it, and then orders for his fleet to be destroyed. Orc Mission 9, Tomb of Sargeras.
Now that the Great Sea is once again under the dominion of our Wave Riders, Ner'zhul has come upon a plan to increase the powers of the Dark Portal. While he was the tutor of Gul'dan, the shaman bound their souls so that he could keep watch over his disciple. Even though Gul'dan knew that this link would serve to inform Ner'zhul of the warlock studies with the spirits that dwelt in the twisting nether, he was too arrogant to care. Ner'zhul has ordered you to lead a small band to the tomb in order to find the jeweled scepter of Sargeras. The remains of the Storm Reaver and Twilight's Hammer encampments surround the entrance to the tomb, and the howling of their tortured souls fill the air. Although the inhabitants of this place died long ago, their bodies have been torn from earthen graves by the vile magics of the demons and made to stalk this region for all eternity.
The Horde returns to the tomb. What the briefing adds that the manual didn't is that the explanation of how Ner'zhul knows where it is. While he was the tutor of Gul'dan, the shaman bound their souls so that he could keep watch over his disciple. Even though Gul'dan knew that this link would serve to inform Ner'zhul of the warlock's studies with the spirits that dwelt in the Twisted Nether, he was too arrogant to care. Ner'zhul has known everything Gul'dan learned about the tomb for decades. He watched his former student make the deal with Medivh, watched him create the Death Knights, watched him sail for the tomb, and watched him die there. He knows exactly what's inside. He's sending a small band, not because he thinks it will be easy, but because anything larger would attract more Alliance attention than it's worth. The briefing describes the ruins of the Storm Reaver and Twilight's Hammer encampments surrounding the entrance, and notes the bodies of Gul'dan's followers have been torn from earthen graves by the vile magics of the demons and made to stalk this region for all eternity. Even in death, Gul'dan's people are still being used. Orc Mission 10, Alterac.
Your capture of the jeweled scepter has greatly pleased Ner'zhul. Word has come that you are to entrust it to the remaining warriors of the Bleeding Hollow clan, as they are to return it to Draenor at all haste. Deathwing and his dragons deliver you to the keep at Alterac. While you could easily bring these curs to their knees, they have hidden the tome you seek. They are also cunning enough to strike a bargain, knowing it is their only salvation. Should they tell you the location of the book, however, they fear the retribution of the nations of Lordaeron and Stromgarde. They would be willing to exchange the Book of Medivh for the destruction of these forces that sit along their borders. You must eliminate the military outposts maintained by Lordaeron and Stromgarde. Then seal your pact by entering into Alterac, contacting the human mage who guards the book and escorting him to safety.
Alterac makes its final appearance in the lore here. The nation that betrayed the alliance that Lord Perinold handed to the Horde during the Second War has since fallen. The briefing describes it as occupied by humans who fear the retribution of the nations of Lordaeron and Stormguard. They're trapped between old enemies and the approaching Horde, and they make the same conclusion Perinold always made. They have the Book of Medivh. They'll trade it for protection. The Horde agrees, eliminates the Alliance outposts on the Alterac borders, and takes the book. Orc Mission 11, The Eye of Dalaran.
With the Book of Medivh in your control and the jeweled scepter delivered to Ner'zhul, only one artifact remains to be won. The mages of Dalaran have created a device to focus their magics in an effort to reconstruct the Violet Citadel. Ner'zhul desires this Eye of Dalaran to focus the dark powers of the underworld for the creation of his portals. Terran Gorfield has traveled to the stronghold of the human mages at Cross Island, where they now rebuilt their towers amid heavy fortifications. You must break through their shoreline defenses, establish a base, and capture the Eye of Dalaran. No walls will protect them from the vengeance of the Horde.
Dalaran is being rebuilt. The Violet Citadel is under reconstruction at Cross Island, and the Kirin Tor have created the Eye of Dalaran, a focusing device for their magical reconstruction efforts. Ner'zhul wants it to focus the dark powers he'll need for the portal ritual. Terran Gorfiend leads the assault on the rebuilding mages. The mission is a raid on an institution trying to recover from a war by the same force that helped cause it. Orc Mission 12, The Dark Portal.
As the burning remains of your victims fill the air with acrid smoke, the sky fills with a figure as black as night. Deathwing descends, exhausted from his long journey from Grim Batal, bearing grave news from his brothers at Blackrock Spire. The Alliance has sent a host of warriors to the Black Morass and has engaged the forces of Warsong and the Shattered Hand at the Dark Portal. You must rally the forces of Shadowmoon to break through this siege and return the artifacts you have secured to Draenor. Only then can Ner'zhul's plan of opening portals to new worlds be realized. Succeed and you will command vast armies as they ravage untold worlds. Fail and be slaughtered.
With all three artifacts secured, the Horde races back to the portal as the Alliance closes in from the Black Morass, and then Ner'zhul's victory text, which deserves to be read slowly, the sky above Draenor tears open, the twisting Never is visible, portals to multiple worlds appear. Ner'zhul begins deploying his forces toward them, and then the aide asks the question, should we not recall all of our forces from Azeroth? No, Ner'zhul responds, they have served their purpose. From this point on, all that we gain will be ours alone. Khadgar Bladefist and the Shattered Hand still on Azeroth, the Warsong clan still fighting at the portal, left behind deliberately. The manual tells us who the player is in this moment, the Slayer of the Shadow Moon, Ner'zhul's personal field commander, and has them follow Ner'zhul unquestioningly into the Twisting Never. This is the canonical fate that Burning Crusade players encounter when they step through the portal into Hellfire Peninsula in 2007. Orcs who were stranded on Azeroth and Draenor for decades, who became the Fell Horde, warped by proximity to demonic energy, with no way home and no one coming for them. Ner'zhul left them there on purpose. They were useful until they weren't. The human campaign, Khadgar's expedition. The Legends section gives us our 5 heroes. Khadgar, Medivh's former apprentice, who spent the years since the First War studying the ruined portal at Nevergard. The manual says he returned to Azeroth following the Second War to oversee the ongoing study of the ruined portal. He has been watching that rift for years, and when it begins to move, he's the first to know. Illyria Windrunner, Elven Ranger, whose family was killed in the devastation of Quel'Thalas during the Second War. The manual describes her as searching through the ashes of the once glorious Quel'Thalas for the remains of her family. Her hatred for the Horde described as all-consuming. She's not fighting this war for the Alliance, she's fighting it because she has nothing left to lose and everyone everyone responsible is still alive. Turalyon, one of the first paladins trained by Uther Lightbringer, veteran of Blackrock Spire. The manual says he secretly harbours a deep regret of his inability to save the Great Knight, meaning Lothar. He watched Lothar die at Blackrock Spire and has never stopped carrying that with him. Danath Trollbane, mercenary captain, hero of the liberation of Khazmodan, described as a great leader during the final battle for the liberation of Khazmodan. Kurdran Wildhammer, dwarven griffin rider, who slain 9 dragons throughout the course of the war, and who and his griffin Skyrie retained the reputation of being the undisputed masters of the skies. 5 people against the whole world. Human Mission 1, Illyria's Journey.
Lord Khadgar, Keeper of the Eternal Watch and Master of the Mystic Citadel of Nethergard, has sensed a dark power gathering around the remnants of the rift that lies within the Black Morass. He believes that a new Orcish invasion is imminent and has urged the Alliance to act. The Elven Ranger Alleria and a small band of her elite guard have been sent as escorts so that you may gather reinforcements to counter this threat. Your travels to the castle of New Stormwind will lead you across the paths of both the paladin called Turalyon and a mercenary captain known as Danath. Engage their aid during your journey, as their leadership may be needed by the Alliance in the dark days ahead.
The Gathering Mission. Illyria leads a small escort force across post-war Azeroth, now described as overrun by returning orcs, collecting Turalyon and Danath along the route to New Stormwind. The format is escort and gather, protecting named heroes while they converge on a rallying point. This is a mission structure Warcraft III will use for almost every major character introduction in its campaigns, and it starts right here. The briefing introduces Khadgar by his full name, Lord Khadgar, Keeper of the Eternal Watch and Master of the Mystic Citadel of Nethergard. He has already sensed what's coming, he's already calling in his people. Human Mission 2, the Battle for Nethergard.
A great host of orcs have reconstructed the Dark Portal and now lay siege to the Citadel of Nethergard. The Horde still maintain their hold over the great winged dragons of Azeroth. A faction of these creatures, seeming to have grown to crave the taste of battle, have become willing allies with the orcs under the leadership of a great black dragon known only as Deathwing. Danath has been asked to raise an army from New Stormwind to relieve the beleaguered forces at Nethergard and drive the Horde back towards the portal. You must lead the forces of Azeroth in an attempt to break the vanguard of the invading Horde, for unless their assault is stopped, they will gain dominion over the Black Morass.
The Horde has reconstructed the portal and is besieging Nethergard. Deathwing and his dragons are already in the air. Danath raises an army from New Stormwind to break the siege. The briefing notes that some of the formerly enslaved dragons have grown to crave the taste for battle, and allied willingly with Deathwing, which inverts the dragon narrative from the Second War entirely. The Dragonmaw use magic to force compliance. Deathwing earns loyalty by offering something the dragons actually want. The same entity approached differently. Human Mission 3, once more unto the breach.
Having broken the momentum of the Horde offensive at Nethergard, the time is ripe for a decisive counterattack. The High Command agrees that a strong assault upon the fortress that the orcs have raised near the Dark Portal may well end the conflict before it has rightly begun. The Archwizard Khadgar, however, believes that the orcish hordes may not be here for the sake of mere conquest. He believes that if the portal can be captured and not destroyed, he can uncover the purpose for the Horde's present invasion into Azeroth.
Having broken the initial assault at Nethergard, Khadgar urges against destroying the portal immediately. He believes the Horde isn't here for conquest this time. They have a different purpose, and he wants the portal captured intact so he can find out what it is. This is the moment Khadgar's role shifts from Watcher to Investigator. The entire human campaign that follows is built on his intuition here. Human Mission 4, Beyond the Dark Portal.
Elven scouts bring chilling news from Azeroth. A tearing of shadows heralded the arrival of the mighty orc shaman Ner'zhul and his guard of death knights within the royal library of New Stormwind. Unleashing their black magics, they slaughtered all who opposed them and then fled into the night with their prize, the Book of Medivh.
This serves to confirm what Khadgar has gleaned from the Battle of Ner'zhul. He is convinced that the Horde is attempting to learn how the great sorcerer opened the rift between our world and that of the Horde, known in the Book of Medivh only as Draenor. With countless domains to plunder, the Horde will become an unstoppable power. The High Command believes that our only recourse is to venture through the portal, both to reclaim the Book of Medivh and to ensure that the Horde can never again threaten Azeroth.
The mission gives the expansion its name. Elven scouts bring news that Ner'zhul himself crossed into New Stormwind's royal library with Death Knights, killed everyone in it, and took the Book of Medivh. Khadgar now understands. Ner'zhul wants to learn how Medivh opened the original rift so he can open more. With countless domains to plunder, the Horde will become an unstoppable power. The only option is to go through. Not defend, not contain, go through the portal into Draenor, recover the artifacts, and stop Ner'zhul at the source. This is genuinely bold. The Alliance is not retreating or holding a line now. They're taking the war to an alien world with 5 heroes and whatever forces they can bring through a portal that everyone knows was built on dark magic by a corrupted sorcerer. Human Mission 5, Upon the Shadowed Seas.
Having fortified your position on the Hellfire Peninsula, where the portal is located, the time has come to establish a fleet to attack the surrounding clans. The Orcish shipyards of Zeth'kur lie nearby, and for our plans to progress, you must destroy them and the ships of war that are stationed there. While the Horde has been stunned by the ferocity of your attack, our presence here has driven the clans to new heights of fury. You will be unable to maintain this foothold for long against their numbers, so your victories must be daring and swift.
The Alliance has established a foothold on the Hellfire Peninsula around the portal and immediately needs to build a fleet to maintain it. The Orc shipyards at Zeth'kur need to be destroyed. The briefing was unusually direct about the precariousness of the position. While the Horde has been stunned by the ferocity of your attack, our presence here has driven the clans to new heights of fury. You will be unable to maintain this foothold for long against their numbers, so your victories must be daring and swift. This is not a comfortable campaign. Every mission on Draenor has the quality of a raid rather than an occupation. Fast, sharp, and constantly outnumbered. Human Mission 6, The Fall of Arkindoon.
Khadgar, Griffin Rider of Nor'dharon, has returned from his patrol with vital news. He has located the hidden fortress of Arkindoon and the battlements that serve as stronghold to the Bleeding Hollow clan. Alaria's rangers also report that they have seen a massive force moving towards the north and suspect that these troops are staging for another attack upon Azeroth. Although the Orcish army is too large for your forces to battle alone, you may be able to launch a raid against Arkindoon. Should your strike succeed, you would force their army to retreat, or be cut off and destroyed. Raise the fortress of Arkindoon and retreat before their forces can rally against you.
Gul'dan returns from aerial patrol with the location of the Bleeding Hollow fortress at Arkindoon. Alaria's rangers have spotted a massive orc force staging for another attack on Azeroth, too large to fight directly. But if Arkindoon falls, those forces have to turn back or be cut off. The mission objective is explicit: raise the fortress and retreat before the army can respond. The briefing does something worth noting. It names Gul'dan and his Griffin Skyrie specifically as the source of the intelligence. The heroes in this campaign are not interchangeable units, they have jobs. Gul'dan scouts, Allaria uses her rangers, Khadgar does the thinking. The structure is already showing you who these people actually are. Human Mission 7, Deathwing.
The arcane powers that surround the blazing ruins of Arkindoon have made urgent the summoning of Khadgar to the lands of the Orcs. The destruction of the Bleeding Hollow clan was not without great price, however, for both Khadgar and his Mount Skyrie were captured by the Horde. While examining the remains of the great fortress, the Archwizard has learned not only the location of the Book of Medivh, but also that another artifact is needed for Ner'zhul's plans to reach fruition: the Skull of Gul'dan. Khadgar believes it will be possible to destroy the portal and permanently seal the rift created by Medivh if he can acquire these artifacts. A great mountain isle lies to the northeast, atop which the Black Dragon Deathwing dwells. The Skull of Gul'dan lies within his lair. Allaria and Khadgar have agreed to aid you in stealing away the skull and, if possible, destroy the Great Dragon. It is rumored that Orcish tribes live on this island and offer captives from the Great War as sacrifices to Deathwing. If you can rescue them, they may know of some weakness in the creature.
Gul'dan is captured. Khadgar, examining Arkandun's ruins, learns two things: the Book of Medivh's location and that a second artifact is needed, the Skull of Gul'dan. Both are connected to Deathwing, who is roosting on a mountain to the northeast. The mission is a raid on Deathwing's lair to steal the skull. The briefing adds a detail that humanises the situation in an unexpected way. It is rumoured that Orcish tribes lived on this island and offer captives from the Great War as sacrifices to Deathwing. If you can rescue them, they may know some of the weaknesses in the creature. There are survivors of the Second War being used as tribute to a dragon on an alien world. The war's aftermath reaches further than anyone had accounted for. Deathwing's role here is worth flagging for the earlier point about his characterization. In the Orc campaign, he is an ally. The Horde approached him correctly and he chose to assist. In the human campaign, he is a target. The Alliance needs what he has and cannot offer him what the Horde could. The same entity, the same motivations, but two completely different relationships depending on what you can bring to the table. Human missions 8 and 9, Coast of Bones and the Heart of Evil.
Seeking out the artifacts needed to seal the rift has given the Horde time to mount a strike against us. A great Orcish armada threatens the coasts that you have captured, and the armies of the Alliance have been hard-pressed on many fronts. Our only chance for victory now lies in obtaining the Book of Medivh. All knowledge of the portal rests in the keeping of Ner'zhul and his Order of Death Knights at the Fortress of Shadowmoon. You must storm and raise the strongholds that guard the coastline of his lands, so that our forces may be brought to bear in an effort to isolate and destroy his cursed sanctuary. Towering spires of Shadowmoon reach upwards as obsidian blades to cleave the hostile amber skies above. The corrupt heart of the mighty shaman's power is within reach. Press your attack, and the bane of Ner'zhul and his Order of Death Knights will be wiped from the face of Draenor forever. By destroying this dark fortress and claiming the Book of Medivh, Khadgar will be able to close the rift, and Azeroth will be rid of the Orcish hordes once and for all.
The push to Shadowmoon. Mission 8 has the Alliance storming the coastline defences around Ner'zhul's fortress. Mission 9 drives into the fortress itself, described in the briefing with language that is almost literary. The towering spires of Shadowmoon reach upwards as obsidian blades to cleave the hostile amber skies above. The expansion's writing is noticeably more vivid when it reaches Draenor, as if the alien landscape required more vivid language to convey. The Heart of Evil's objective is to destroy Shadowmoon, kill or scatter the Death Knights, and claim the Book of Medivh. Khadgar believes this ends it. The briefing is almost optimistic. By destroying this dark fortress and claiming the Book of Medivh, Khadgar will be able to close the rift and Azeroth will be rid of the Orcish hordes once and for all. Almost. Human Mission 10, Siege of Vanguard.
Although the fortress of Ner'zhul has been destroyed and the Death Knights scattered, neither the Shaman nor the Book of Medivh has been found. As Khadgar and Betrayal use their magics to search the ruins for some clue as to the location of the mystic tome, a gnomish flying machine descends, bringing news from the Hellfire Peninsula and the portal. A multitude of orcs have laid siege to the fortifications at Hellfire. Although the attacking warriors are not well equipped, their sheer numbers may spell the downfall of our forces there. You must take command of the Alliance armies at Hellfire and break the siege before our troops are pushed back through the dark portal. We must withstand their charge long enough for the Book of Medivh to be recovered and the rift forever sealed.
Shadowmoon is destroyed. The Death Knights are scattered, but Ner'zhul and the Book of Medivh have not been found in the ruins. While Khadgar searches, a gnomish flying machine arrives with news. The portal is under siege. A massive orc force is pushing the Alliance back towards the Dark Portal on Hellfire Peninsula. The mission is a desperate defensive action. Hold the portal long enough for Khadgar to find the book and seal the rift. The expansion is compressing its climax efficiently now. Every mission in this act has the feeling of multiple things happening simultaneously that can't all be stopped. Human Mission 11, Dance of the Laughing Skull.
You have proven your strength in battle, but none can stand against the combined might of the Horde. We of the Laughing Skull clan, however, seek advantage from the turmoil of this war. With the aid of your strongest warriors, our clan can gain dominance over the northern clans of Draenor. Do not show surprise, human. Only the strongest survive within the Horde. You must secure the passes across the Blade's Edge Mountains and destroy the stronghold of the Thunderlord clan that dwell there. We will supply you with warriors and supplies culled from our villages. In return, we will give you the Book of Medivh, which we seized from Ner'zhul's stronghold before your armies could destroy it.
One of the expansion's strangest and most memorable missions. The briefing is voiced by an orc, the Laughing Skull clan representative addressing a human commander directly. The opening line is everything. You have proven your strength in battle, but none can stand against the combined might of the Horde. We of the Laughing Skull clan, however, seek advantage from the turmoil of this war. They stole the Book of Medivh from Ner'zhul's ruined fortress before the Alliance could find it. They'll give it back in exchange for the Alliance destroying the Thunderlord clan's stronghold so the Laughing Skull can consolidate power in the north. Survival and advantage are the only things the Laughing Skull care about, and the Alliance accepts. The manual's clan entries describe the Laughing Skull as perhaps the most treacherous of all clans, feeling a kinship to thievery and assassination. Distrusted by their fellow orcs, the representative's contempt for the human commander is completely transparent in the briefing. Do not show surprise, human, only the strongest survive within the Horde, and they offer the deal anyway, because principle is for people who can afford it. Human Mission 12, The Bitter Taste of Victory.
Khadgar has discovered that although the Book of Medivh was stolen from Ner'zhul, the ancient shaman has learned enough of its secrets to conjure his darkest spell. Over the blood-red skies of Draenor, huge dimensional rifts appear, crackling with the cosmic energy of the twisting nether. Valeria's scouts report that Ner'zhul and his followers escaped through the largest of the new rifts as Draenor felt the first of its death throes. The tremendous energies emitted from the converging rifts have succeeded in breaking down the fabric of reality in Draenor, unleashing massive earthquakes and tidal waves upon its shores. Unless the dark portal is closed on both worlds, Azeroth will be subject to an enormous backlash of energy resulting from Draenor's catastrophic discorporation. Using the combined powers of the Book of Medivh and the Skull of Gul'dan, you must return Khadgar to the Dark Portal and seal the rift between Azeroth and the doomed world of Draenor forever.
Khadgar has discovered that Ner'zhul, even without the book, has learned enough of its contents to complete his ritual. The portals are already open over Draenor. The planet's structural integrity is being torn apart by dimensional forces Ner'zhul has unleashed. Ner'zhul himself has already fled through the largest rift, and the briefing delivers what is perhaps the most technically alarming sentence in any Warcraft briefing ever written. Unless the Dark Portal is closed on both worlds, Azeroth will be subject to an enormous backlash of energy resulting from Draenor's catastrophic discorporation. Draenor is currently dying and everyone is standing on it. Using a Book of Medivh and the Skull of Gul'dan together, Khadgar seals the rift. The portal collapses, and then the victory text, called Khadgar's Sacrifice, does something the Orc victory text doesn't. It takes its time.
As the flames die to embers and the arcane energies that once bound two worlds slowly fade, the dark portal crumbles into dust as its powers subside and dissolve. The finality of what has been done here becomes manifest. The moment is shattered as volcanoes erupt in fiery fury, as the earth begins to shake beneath your feet. The world of Draenor is dying. Khadgar motions towards the remaining rifts created by Ner'zhul and beckons you to follow him. The warriors of Azeroth under your command gaze upon the rifts with uncertainty, but to remain would be suicide. Knowing that their beloved Azeroth is safe from harm, they gather up weapons and wounded companions alike as you lead them into the swirling, unknown reaches of the twisting nether.
Khadgar, Turalyon, Illyria, Danath, Kurdran, everyone who came through that portal, they do not go back. In World of Warcraft, they are commemorated with statues at the entrance to Stormwind. 5 figures frozen in stone, facing a gate they walked through and never returned from. When Burning Crusade players stepped through the portal into Hellfire Peninsula in 2007, they were walking into the ruins of the world that these characters gave their lives to protect Azeroth from. In the Legion expansion, released over a decade after Burning Crusade, most of them finally return, having spent 20 years fighting across the Twisted Nether with no way home. Turalyon and Illyria became a couple somewhere in those lost decades. Their son Arator, half human, half elf, appears in Burning Crusade as a young man in Honor Hold, wondering what happened to his parents, not knowing if they were alive. He then is a main character in the most recent expansion, Midnight. The threads that started in this expansion reach very far into the future. Warcraft II and Beyond the Dark Portal together do something that's easy to underestimate, because from the outside they look like straightforward RTS sequels. More units, better graphics, naval combat, a map editor, the kind of improvements you'd expect from a successful game studio following up on a hit. But look at what the manuals have actually built across these two games and their expansion, and you're looking at something much more ambitious than a sequel. You're looking at the foundation of an entire cosmology. Go back to where Aegwyn's account started. She's a 1,000-year-old guardian of a secret order whose entire purpose is to protect the world from forces coming through something she calls the Great Dark Beyond. She fought and defeated the demon lord Sargeras 800 years before the First War and sealed him in a tomb beneath the ocean. She chose a mortal father for her heir, transferred all of her power into an infant and left, and that infant grew up to make a deal with an alien warlock that set two worlds at war. Now go to where Gul'dan's account ended. He learned about the Twisting Nether from a demon named kil'jaeden, who was himself frightened of Medivh, who was corrupted by distant forces within the Twisting Nether that Aegwyn never identified. He created the Shadow Council, manufactured the First War, built the Death Knights, and died in a tomb full of demons loyal to the demon lords his teacher feared. Now go to where Beyond the Dark Portal's Orc campaign ended. Ner'zhul, Gul'dan's original teacher, who watched his student from a distance through soulbinding for decades, opened portals to multiple worlds and fled into the Twisting Nether with the artifacts Gul'dan spent his entire life trying to reach. The shaman who taught the warlock who started everything is now loose in the space between worlds with tools capable of invading realities at will. By the end of Beyond the Dark Portal, the Warcraft universe has established all of this. There are worlds without number connected by the Twisting Nether. Beings of enormous power, kil'jaeden, Sargeras, operate between them and have been doing so for longer than any of the civilizations we've met have existed. The Orcish Horde was not an independent force of aggression, it was manufactured. Kil'jaeden shaped Gul'dan. Gul'dan shaped Blackhand. Blackhand was the face of something that ran through layers of manipulation all the way back to forces the manual never fully names. And Medivh, the key figure who actually opened the portal, was corrupted before he was born, by those same forces reaching into the power Aegwyn locked inside him in 559. The First War was not an accident, and it was not purely Medivh's choice. It was the result of something that started when Aegwyn imprisoned Sargeras and walked away believing her work was done. The specific retcon the Warcraft II manual introduces, Medivh as a deliberate, active architect of the invasion rather than an accidental one, is what makes all of this possible. Go back to the Warcraft I manual. Lothar's account says Aegwyn warned them that Medivh had inadvertently opened a gateway, that the Orcs' own warlocks found and exploited it from their side. If that version stands, the First War is a tragedy of circumstance. A sorcerer with too much power and a corrupted soul makes a catastrophic mistake, and two different worlds pay the price. But Aegwyn's Warcraft II account replaces that entirely. Medivh didn't make a mistake, he made a deal. He communicated through deep trances and astral projection with Gul'dan, offered the Tomb of Sargeras as payment, accepted the destruction of Azeroth as terms, and opened the portal in 583 as deliberate delivery on a conscious bargain. The First War is now the opening move of something that started long before 1994, and connects all the way up through forces the manual identifies but never fully explains. That's what makes Warcraft III possible. When that game reveals that what we've been watching across Warcraft 1, 2 and Beyond the Dark Portal is actually the early stages of a Burning Legion campaign to corrupt and consume Azeroth, a campaign that has been running for millennia through agents like Sargeras, kil'jaeden, and the corruption woven into Medivh before he was even born. It doesn't contradict anything established here, it completes it. Every piece is already in place. Gul'dan served kil'jaeden. Kil'jaeden feared Medivh. Medivh was corrupted by Sargeras' influence lingering in the power Aegwyn transferred to him at birth. Aegwyn imprisoned Sargeras, and Sargeras is what the Burning Legion serves. The chain runs backwards from the internment camps of the post-Second War period all the way to a battle 800 years before the First War that Aegwyn thought she had won, and forward. Ner'zhul, fleeing through the dimensional rifts with the artifacts needed to corrupt world after world, will not stay Ner'zhul. What the Twisted Nether does to him will become Warcraft III's central horror. The Skull of Gul'dan, which the Alliance uses to seal the portal, and which Gul'dan spent his entire existence trying to claim, will reappear in Warcraft III in the hands of Illidan Stormrage. Deathwing, who armed himself with adamantine plates and chose his own allegiances through Beyond the Dark Portal, will spend decades in hiding before resurfacing to nearly destroy the world in World of Warcraft's Cataclysm expansion. Kargath Bladefist, left behind on Azeroth by Ner'zhul, will become the leader of the fell horde that Burning Crusade players fight through Hellfire Peninsula. Grom Hellscream, who appeared in Beyond the Dark Portal's first mission as a prisoner to be rescued, will be the character at the centre of Warcraft III's most devastating and most redemptive story. The threads that begin here are not subplots, they are the main story. Everything Warcraft III does, the Scourge, the Lich King, the Legion, the corruption of Arthas, grows from the soil that these two games turned over. After Beyond the Dark Portal, the Dark Portal is rubble on both sides. Draenor is a shattered, dying world. What World of Warcraft will call Outland when Burning Crusade players step through the rebuilt portal in 2007, a place where the sky is torn and landscape is fractured, and the survivors are the worst of what was left behind. The Alliance is fractured, the Horde is scattered and interned. 5 heroes are walking through dimensional rifts in a dying world with no way home, and some wearing a twisting nether, an ancient shaman who has just torn reality open, is becoming something else entirely. Warcraft II, Tides of Darkness and Beyond the Dark Portal together are where the Warcraft universe stops being a game setting and starts being a mythology. The connections to WoW are everywhere, and they're not superficial. The Blasted Lands are what the Black Morass became, the corrupted soil around the portal spreading outward for decades, the land itself marked by what passed through it. Dalaran's Violet Spire, rebuilt after the raids of Beyond the Dark Portal, will be destroyed again in Warcraft III and then reassembled as a floating city in World of Warcraft's Wrath of the Lich King expansion. Norshire Abbey, rebuilt after the First War. New Stormwind, which Varian Rin inherits and which is still the human capital in WoW today, visiting a stonemason built that the Horde attacked twice within the span of these 2 games. The Dark Portal through which every Burning Crusade player walked in 2007 is the same portal whose ruins Khadgar had been studying since the Second War ended. Rebuilt once more by forces that understood its original construction better than anyone alive. The characters introduced across these manuals will each go on to define significant parts of WoW's story. Uther Lightbringer, whose death at the hands of Arthas in Warcraft III is one of that game's defining tragedies. Gen Greymane, whose isolation policy fell Gilneas, seeded right here in the Nations section, leads directly to the Worgen Curse and the Cataclysm starting zone. Daelin Proudmoore, who appeared in Warcraft III's The Frozen Throne as the antagonist of Jaina's storyline, his post-war break with the Alliance finally explained, his hatred of orcs shown in full, his death at the hands of the Horde he spent his whole life fighting. Varian Rin is a boy in a boat who grows up to be one of WoW's most complex and most argued about characters, whose entire arc is shaped by the loss of the father figure Lothar represented. Some of them end heroically, some of them don't. Some of them make choices that the lore never quite forgives them for, but every one of those choices is rooted in what these these games and these manuals established. In my next video, we'll move on to Warcraft III Reign of Chaos. The Horde reforms under a leader nobody expected. The Scourge rises in the north and begins doing things to Lordaeron that makes the Second War look like a border dispute. A prophet appears with a warning that nobody wants to hear, and the face under the prophet's hood is one that we've seen before. Medivh comes back, and this time he's trying to undo what he started. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to become a channel member like these awesome guys, then click the button down below. You get some cool perks like shoutouts in each video, custom badges on YouTube, and custom emojis. Anyways, that's enough from me for today, and I'll see you in the next one.